Standing for our invocation by Councilmember Owen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, as we come together tonight on the precipice of spring, we can feel the sense of hope emanating throughout our community. The weather is turning warm, kids are active and happy in school, and we are coming together as a body tonight to work on critical issues for our community. We ask that you fill this chamber with wisdom, with comity, and with patience. Help us to seek to understand and do the people's bidding tonight. Lord, we ask a prayer of blessing over our community. Keep our neighbors safe. Help us come together as a unified community committed to making Billings the safest and best place it can be. We face many challenges, but we know we have many opportunities. We ask that you guide this chamber's work, both tonight and as we come together this weekend for a critical planning session for our community. In all things, Lord, call us to serve your great and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Tony, if you would please call the roll.
Councilmember Shaw? Here. Gulick? Here. Neese?
Excused.
Owen?
Here.
Joy?
Present.
Kennedy?
Here.
Aspen Leader?
Here.
Tidswell?
Here.
Boyette?
Here.
Rupsis? Here. Mayor Cole?
Here. Council, our first order of business are our minutes from February 26, 2024. Are there any changes, discussion, or motion? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve the minutes from February 26, 2024 as read.
Very good. Is there a second? Councilmember Shaw. Any discussion? Before we proceed to a vote. Don't see any, so the motion is for approval. Minutes, February 26. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item are council courtesies. I'd like to just begin by recognizing our city attorney, Gina Dahl, is with us. And Gina, sadly, your mother recently passed away, and you took some good time off to be with your family, and wish you the very best. And sorry that you and yours have had to go through that, but we wish you the very best. If there's anything the city can do, we can do individually, please let us know. Other council courtesies this evening. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This weekend, I had a meeting with Senator Mike Yakovich, former council member, and some residents in the Central Terry Park task force area that have been going through quite a few issues of public safety. And I would just like to express my thanks to Billings Police Department for the hard work that they're doing trying to address some of these issues, and also to Assistant City Administrator Iflin for keeping these properties on a watch list. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Rassenleiter.
All right, let's talk basketball. So the MSUB men's and women's team both made the Elite Eight for the West. Men are a 3 seed, the women are a 4 seed. Our own Coach Wooden for the women's team was Coach of the Year, as was the coach of the men. I can't remember his name, but he was Coach of the Year as well. First year, yeah. Anyway, awards around. I think Cole Badbear was Newcomer of the Year and MVP in the GNAC. Ms. Knutson was Defensive Player of the Year. And so awards all over the place for our MSUB Yellow Jackets. So go Jackets this week.
Should the city council challenge the girls' team to a intramural contest?
I don't think that's a good idea.
You don't think so? Okay. All right, we'll pass on that. Any other council courtesies this evening? This evening, in recognition of AmeriCorps Week, and we also are privileged to have with us some of our AmeriCorps volunteers. And we'll ask Carly, maybe after this proclamation is read, to you can make your introductions however you would like. So the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas in 1963, President John F. Kennedy envisioned a national service corps to help provide urgently needed services in poverty areas. Less than 2 years later, President Lyndon B. Johnson made Kennedy's dream a reality by launching the War on Poverty and welcoming the first group of VISTA volunteers after signing the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. And whereas the city of Billings is required to implement anti-poverty initiatives to reduce the number of families experiencing poverty as a recipient of community development block grant funding. And in 2009, the city of Billings was chosen as an established site for the Billings Metro Vista project by the Corporation for National and Community Service to aid in poverty impact initiatives. And whereas the BMVP project has hosted 278 members who have volunteered to impact poverty through activities designed to enhance economic opportunity, education, healthy futures, and services for veterans and military families at 59 different organizations. And members have generated over $5.2 million in funding, and the value of human resources brings that total project to well over $11 million. And whereas the BMVP members are valuable contributors to the city's economy and have expended over $2.5 million locally to produce housing, provisions, and retail services. 32 members were originally from Montana, and other members have moved to Billings from 43 different states in the District of Columbia. 39% of the full year members have chosen to reside, work, and pay taxes in Billings following their volunteer service. And whereas the city of Billings welcomes this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the AmeriCorps Vista program and its talented members and alums as they continue to work toward breaking the cycle of poverty in the Billings area. Now, therefore, I, William Cole, Mayor of the City of Billings, do hereby proclaim March 10 through 16, 2024 as AmeriCorps Week in our community. And with that, Carly, and I see we've got Tam with us as well, I'll turn it over to you to make your introductions or have your volunteers come forward and tell us a little bit about themselves.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carly Collins. I'm a grants coordinator for the Community Development Division. Tonight we have 6 members, so they are all serving in and around Billings. So 5 are here and 1 is online with us as well, so she can go at the end. But we'll just have them come up individually, introduce themselves, share a little bit about where they're from, their education, and their projects that they're working on. And then afterwards, if we could get a picture with everyone, that would be much appreciated.
That'd be great. So if you guys could just kind of line up behind the podium, and then just whoever wants to start off, it's all yours.
Hello, my name is Daniel Seidel. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I studied mechanical engineering at Cedarville University, and then I did post-bac pre-medical studies at Cleveland State University. I currently serve as the Vista leader for the Billings Metro Vista project. I do resource development for our current vistas. I help with community engagement mostly with our partners, and as well as our prospective partners and interested parties. And I also help bolster recruitment efforts for the project itself.
Great. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Matt Benowitz. I'm from Encinitas, California, originally, 1,300 miles. I studied political science and classical civilization at UCLA, and I am working with the Adaptive Performance Center at 1420 Broadwater Avenue to improve healthy futures for veterans. APC is a unique, really first of its kind, veterans-only fitness center, and they have a mission of eliminating veteran suicide. Their motto is move your body, heal your mind, and there is a mountain of evidence that bears that out. So we are looking to improve capacity, get more veterans involved, improve fundraising practices, and alleviate poverty in the Billings area by removing physical and mental conditions as a barrier to employment and interaction for our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ren Elias. I'm originally from Northern Virginia, outside DC. I just graduated from Duke University with a degree in sociology, and I'm currently serving at the Yellowstone Art Museum, working to increase access to K through 12 arts education.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Anana Hankey, and I'm currently serving with Billings Parks and Recreation to expand capacity and also ensure long-term sustainability at the Amon Park Community Garden. And this project was actually started about 10 years ago by another AmeriCorps Vista, so we're continuing her good work in helping the Billings South Side. It is currently considered a food desert, which means that folks don't have access to fresh produce as readily as other parts of town, and that ultimately impacts their long-term health outcomes. So we're trying to get people excited about gardening, to provide the space and resources necessary for them to get their hands dirty and to put fresh food on the table. A little bit more about me. I'm from Oregon originally, and I received my undergraduate degree in religious studies from the University of Oregon back in 2015, and I will actually be returning to U of O this fall as a double duck, is what we call it, to receive my master in landscape architecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Abby Shear, and I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, specifically Kent, and I went to Ohio University to get my bachelor's in political science with a minor in law, justice, and culture. And I am currently serving with the Yellowstone County Continuum of Care. And my project is focusing on building the COC's capacity through applying for funding opportunities. I'm specifically focused on raising money for the diversion fund to be used in diverting people from homelessness. And additionally, I've been assisting the COC in administrative activities, creating promotional and informational documents, and presenting research findings. And overall, I'm serving with the COC to raise funds to help unhoused individuals in Billings and to increase community recognition. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. Can we give a hand to these great volunteers? Carly, if you'd like to photo, come on up. And why don't you guys just stand right in front? We'll stand. Oh, I apologize. Thank you very much. We missed Gillian. Can you get unmute? Gillian, it's all yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, my name is Jillian. I am from Lexington, Kentucky. So I graduated from Allegheny College in Pennsylvania with a Bachelor's of Arts in Global Health and a minor in Biology. So I am currently in Helena. So I serve Mountain Health Gives as a part of their Little Peeps initiative. So I assist in program development such as communications and fundraising. And so the overall goal of this project is to enhance the development of Little Peeps to foster healthy futures and improve healthcare outcomes by providing access to vision care, including eyeglasses and eye exams to those in need. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Well, again, welcome. Come on forward. Gillian, you'll have to drive really fast if you're going to get here. And we'll just stand behind and put the tall people in front of the tall people.
All right.
Yeah, that works if you guys are willing to do that.
Oh my God. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Again.
And Mayor, if I could say, as people are sitting down, as you well know, this is a nationally recognized AmeriCorps program. Well north of 50% of the AmeriCorps who start off here in Billings stay in Billings. So a number of these are likely to become residents of our community permanently, not only in their work as AmeriCorps, but it is simply amazing what we get as a community from these folks coming, volunteering their services and their time to make our community a better place. So just that plug, which I know all of you are very well familiar with, but I think many of our citizens have no idea about this program, its national recognition, and how it brings in tremendous added resources to our community. So
It does. Thank you very much. Tremendous energy, skills that our VISTA members bring to us every year. So thank you very much for being here. We wish you guys the very best in your year ahead. And welcome to Billings. Okay, our council reports, anything from organizations, committees that you serve on behalf of the city that you'd like to report? Okay, city administrator report, Chris.
Mayor and council, just a handful of things. First, specific to the agenda tonight, so regular agenda item number 2. You received an email to this effect this morning, but Public Works staff wishes to continue the public hearing concerning rescinding Resolution 90-16317. It's Hogan Homestead. Jennifer DeRay will give a brief overview, kind of set the stage, high level, just for the, so that there's context, and then we'll ask that it be, the public hearing be continued until April 22nd. The Homeowners Association has asked for some additional time to work through some issues. So ask that we make that change for regular agenda item number 2. Next up, you've got some small kind of flyers in front of you. Tomorrow, we have a very exciting groundbreaking of the West End Water Treatment Plant. It is out at 4374 Hesper Road. On the back of there's a map. Bottom line, if you're looking for it as a citizen, we're west of Shiloh on Hesper, and I'm sure there'll be a decent-sized crowd there. You won't be able to miss us, but that is at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and this project, as you all are well aware, is well over a decade in the making and is a hugely critical project for our community. So exciting about that groundbreaking tomorrow, so please plan to attend that. Also, a reminder that on Friday, this Friday, March the 15th, we'll do the first installment of our retreat with the city council and department heads, and Kevin and I at noon, right immediately west of City Hall. So we're up in the second floor of the Rock 31, or Big Sky Economic Development building. The second floor has got a wonderful training room space there. We'll start there at noon, and then again, we'll wrap up about 5:30 with dinner, and then Saturday morning, we'll start at 8 a.m. You'll notice in the agenda that went out today, there are some time estimates for subjects. I just ask that any public who will be attending and the council, please keep in mind those are loose estimates of time slots. So if there's a particular area you want to be there for, I would come early, and I would anticipate having to stay late, because I think some of the most important things we can be doing there is if we get into a good dialogue, or we're developing, some policy direction, we don't want to just prematurely cut that off because the clock said it's 2:15. And we've deliberately allowed quite a bit of flex time there to make sure that we can have those conversations. So that's this Friday and Saturday, immediately to our west. We share an alley with that building. And last but not least, no ex parte communication to share with you for agenda items this evening. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That brings us then to public comment on non-public hearing items. So this is an opportunity to come forward and speak to the council. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Tell us your name and address. And this is the time to speak on items 1, 5, and 6 on our agenda. Everything else, there'll be an opportunity for public hearing later. Item number 1 is our consent agenda. Number 5 is the Honaker Project TIF application. I'll just tell you, item number 4 we'll have a public hearing technically on the buy-sell agreement, but I'm not going to care if you talk about the TIF agreement during that public hearing. So you can either, if you want to address the TIF application now, you can, or you can wait until item number 4 to bring that up. I just ask that you not speak twice on that topic. So with that, if you'd like to be heard on items 1, 5, or 6, please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Steve Simonson, Billings Association of Realtors. Actually, I have a thank you for Tom Rupsis for helping us with the National Association of Realtors grant last week. The letter that I had submitted last week we were one of 17 national finalists, and so we're hoping for a positive outcome, and just wanted to say thank you to Tom for that. As you go into your planning session this week, please keep in mind obtainable workforce housing as a top priority. There is a direct link between public safety and safe and secure housing in our community. So we're also in the process of reviewing the subdivision changes that are being proposed. I believe Chris had that on the agenda for April 15th. We'd like to ask if we could have a little bit more time to review that with the homeowners, with the Home Builders Association. Neither the Billings Association of Realtors or the home builders were included in that 8-month process where those draft regulations were submitted. So we're asking for an extension of your time and consideration for that. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Steve and Chris, I assume you'll be talking with staff about that scheduling issue. Is there any other public comment on items 1, 5, or 6?
Mayor and Council, my name is Cheryl Davis, 1231 Claim Jumper. I have a letter I'm going to read from that my husband wrote in response to the sidewalk proposal in our neighborhood. It's thank you for your recent letter and map indicating you are considering adding a sidewalk to our lane in effort to promote safety and appearance of our neighborhood. First, in the interest of safety, I would strongly recommend you revisit the site of the street being considered. I've lived at 1231 Claim Jumper located on the east side of the lane for the past 35 years. Our residents, along with 1221 and 1241, are located outside downsloping bend. During winter weather, the vehicles traveling on the curved lane push any snow or slush downhill to the outside curb. This often causes dangerous traffic conditions, sometimes resulting in drivers losing control on the curve and driving through our yard and neighbors' yards. We gave up trying to keep our split rail fence intact and removed it. I've replaced our mailbox posts 3 times in the past 10 years due to the impact of vehicles losing control on the downward sloping curved lane. Both neighboring homeowners have replaced theirs as well. The street light pole located in front of our home has also been hit, and nearby street sign on the corner been knocked down at least 2 times. Thankfully, pedestrians seldom walk on the east side of the lane and weren't victims like our fence, mailboxes, light poles, and street signs. Since receipt of the letter, I've made a point to count the number of children walking north towards Sandstone Elementary on Claim Jumper in front of our home. We have watched the lane in front of the house every school day, 7:30, 8:30, and observed no children walking to school. You may see, however, a few kids from time period as well as after school walking in a section of Claim Jumper north of us from Hardwood to Babcock. I do occasionally observe other pedestrians, mostly dog walkers, at various times of the day, but mostly choose to walk on the west side of Claim Jumper. In the interest of promoting safety, please reconsider the plan to add a sidewalk to the east side of Claim Jumper. If constructed, we believe it will invite and endanger the safety of pedestrians using this often dangerous and unsafe section of the lane. If this program, for some reason, must go forward, we suggest you look at moving the project to the west side of Claim Jumper Lane, which may prove to be somewhat safer. Since Aronson opened up that used to be closed off to go downtown, it's used as kind of a shortcut for some reason, and speed is more of an issue than anything else on our street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Greg Kenyon. I rise to speak and ask that you reconsider the Claim Jumper portion of the sidewalk expansion. Before I do that, thank you for serving as our councilor mayor It's often unthankful. I thank you to staff who work on the engineering for such projects. I'm against this portion, but I know the engineering is a hard task, and I want to say thank you in general anyway. I'm against this for three reasons. First of all, purpose. Second of all, fairness. And third of all, timing. Purpose. It was stated the purpose of this is safety. And as my neighbor described, that side of the street is not the safest. And as you also look at the map, you'll see that side of the street creates numerous crossings of additional streets that are not required if the sidewalk was put on the west side of the street. Another safety reason. So I question if this is really the best design that accomplishes the purpose. When it comes to fairness, I learned from my late neighbor, her husband, that there's being proposed a boulevard and a sidewalk. I can't confirm that, but I know many of the streets in the area do not have that. In fact, this claim jumper lines up very closely with Aronson. The recent expansion in Aronson, all my neighbors got a sidewalk only. They're not expanding another 5 feet, adding a boulevard. So for fairness reasons, please reconsider this design. And thirdly, when it comes to timing, this neighborhood was hit with a flood just within the last few years. The flood was caused by a very large leak in a pipe in the city's water main at the corner of Claim Jumper and Gold Pan. That flood caused me to have a loss of over $50,000, which I have not recuperated. As a side note, maybe consider informing the citizens of Billings someday as a separate issue that insurance levels in the city require people. I'm in a flood zone effectively, but that's for another day. This flood zone created by a local utility. But timing of it's not a great time to go another $12,000 in debt after already being $50,000 in debt due to a recent flood. And in also regard to timing, show compassion for my neighbor who's a recent widow, lost her husband since he wrote that letter. We have the advantage in being local city government. It's not like the feds. It's not like the state. I can come here and look at my representatives eyeball to eyeball. Please take advantage of the opportunity to show compassion to my neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Any other public comment on items 1, 5, or 6? Item 1 being the consent agenda with all the subparts. I think we were just talking about item 1H, or I'm sorry, 1I, resolution ordering improvements for the missing sidewalk program. Any other public comment on those items? Not seeing anybody coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period. Council, we'll look to you for separations. Are there any separations? Councilmember Aspenleiter.
Let me get back to my, so I'm only getting paid like half paid today. I've got to separate for purposes of recusal 1H, 1J, and K2. 1K2.
Thank you very much. Any other separations? Councilmember Boyette.
Well, as long as we have folks here, how about we separate number I?
Very good. I'm sure we'll want some input from engineering staff on that item. Any other separations? Okay, we'll proceed to the non-separated items. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move to approve the items of the consent agenda as submitted, with the exceptions of items removed for separation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Tiswell. Council, do you have any, even if you didn't make separations, any questions or comments about the non-separated items? Councilmember Owen.
Thank you. Mayor, I have two questions. The first is, if we're separating 1I, don't we also need to separate 1A1?
Okay, and I apologize, I may have misspoke. Debbie, do you know, is the claim jumper one only in 1A1, or does that involve 1I? Which one is it?
It's in both. If you remove one, you have to remove the other two.
Okay, so Councilmember Boyette, I assume that was your intent.
Right.
And so thank you for pointing that out.
And then, Mayor, I do have a question about 1C from the Parks Department. Mike, I think you know this, and Debbie knows this as well, regarding here the Little League contract. And I think the partnership we have with Little League is phenomenal. But as you know, in the Heights, we have this little problem at Cherrick Field, which has to do with the underlying infrastructure that supports the concession stand. And what I don't notice in the MOU is who's in charge of those sorts of things. Like, how are we going to get this fixed for Heights Little League?
Mayor and Council and Councilperson Owen, so it's not included in that because that is the only location I have anything like that. And that was never actually permitted within the city. It was some parents who just went out there, dug basically a pit and put the rocks in there and then drained it into that. So it's not permitted in any way. So I didn't see any reason why I needed to cover it. I believe if the Little League truly intended to do that, I guess we would work with them to get it pushed through and help them with that. I don't know about the cost though, since I don't do that with any other Little Leagues.
Yeah. So in general then, is it if there's a pipe problem under the field, we're responsible for the city's responsible for the water or sewer infrastructure drainage issues up to the point that the Little League has made improvements? Is that sort of the dividing line?
So, Councilperson Owen, so we maintain if there was a sewer pipe underneath the field, we would maintain that. This was a not approved by anybody to install that. So there's no infrastructure there that for me to maintain. But like if there's a city water line, no, that's on the city to maintain that, correct? Irrigation lines, that's all on us, of course.
I saw irrigation. I just didn't see the things about like drainage and that sort of stuff. And so the city handles that?
Correct.
Okay. And do you feel like, when you worked on this MOU this year, did everything go well? Any red flags? Anything we should be aware of?
So any of the red flags were all addressed already with Little League. We had numerous meetings with them. The director, the regional director and us had numerous meetings, sent it out to all the Little Leagues, and they all were in agreement with it. They like it because it definitely spells out exactly what the city's going to do and then the things that they're responsible then for on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's important that we have clarity because they'll fundraise around what they know.
Correct.
I just would ask that you and Director Melling do everything you can to try to find a solution for Cherrick Field because it is a multi-year issue and I know there's an expense to it, but I hope we can keep talking about it.
Do noted.
Thanks, Mayor.
Good, thank you. Council, any other questions or discussion on the non-separate items? Councilman Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out item 1D, where we have the Homeowners Association of Annenfeld subdivision has requested and worked with the Parks Department to basically take over the maintenance of most of the PMD there, not including their playgrounds, maintenance and that kind of stuff. But we had it on an agenda a couple weeks ago to talk about how can homeowners associations that feel like they can do a better job or want to do think they can be more cost effective than the Parks Department might have that option. And here's a good example of how that's being done. I'd like to make sure that, I don't want to take the time tonight to really dig into it, because we've got a lot on the agenda tonight, but I think that is kind of worth having a conversation on in a future work session. We could talk more about how this deal was arranged and the types of considerations that went into it, and hopefully encourage other HOAs out there to consider that as an option for themselves as well.
Very good, thank you. And I just want to give a shout out to our City Parks Department and administration on item 1G, our community forestry grant. That's $1 million that we are only getting because staff working hard to find those dollars and get those dollars. So taxpayers of Billings, you know that your staff members are out there looking for those dollars so that they don't have to become direct Billings taxpayer expenses. So good job, congratulations, thank you. We look forward to those much needed improvements in our street canopy in years ahead. Anything else on the non-separate items before we proceed to a vote? Seeing none, so the motion is for approval of the items that were not separated. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Let's take up then our first item, item 1A1 from the missing sidewalk project. And the claim jumper issues that we just heard, that also will impact item 1I. I wonder if I could just ask Debbie or whoever Debbie would like to appoint, Okay, so you heard the issues. I don't want to pretend to summarize them all, but safety issues on which side of the street. This is kind of above, a level of detail is above a lot of our pay grade, so if you can enlighten us as best you can.
Sure. So, yeah, I heard three things, side of the road, speeding on the road, and then boulevard versus curb walk were the three things I heard. If someone else heard something else, remind me of that at the end. This was a tough one because we did pick one side or the other. As you know, most of the time when we put sidewalk on a street, we put it on both sides. But in this case, we did find that Kevin's pulling this up. If you look to the northeast side, so you're looking where all the multifamily housing is on the top of the screen. There you go. Kevin's got his cursor going. There's a lot of multifamily housing in there. And below there, you're talking that those are the neighborhoods where the kids are walking from, and they're going to the school on the other side of Babcock. So we are putting in a crossing on Babcock, and it lines up with the sidewalk on the north side, on the other side, which takes you to the school on the north side. So we kept it on the north side because the north and east side, because we wanted to keep people crossing the street as few times as we could. That's why we chose that side, and also because that's where we thought a lot of the kids would be walking from. That's why we picked that side. As far as curb walk and boulevard walk, as you know, our standard is boulevard walk. By the time you have curb walk and you have mailboxes and you have garbage cans that sit out there and all sorts of things, it just ends up really being restricted. So boulevard walks tend to be safer. They're further away from traffic. They're less congested, and we have better luck with those boulevards walks, which is why that's our standard, if we can do it. I will say there's a couple of places on here that have trees and other things where we are going to go to curb walk for a minute just to avoid some of those existing issues. And the last thing is the speeds. We do have a speed study plan for this street. If there is speeding, as you know, we have a traffic calming project in our CIP. We are working on that. So if there is speeding and it's a school route, we'll make sure that we get that included in our traffic calming to try to get that addressed. Is there anything else?
Councilmember Rowan, Councilmember Gillick?
Debbie, can you share with us, was there a neighborhood meeting held for this?
So this is our missing sidewalk project. So what we do is we send out one letter, and I have the dates on those, but I'll go into this. We send out one letter that says, hello, we're looking at putting in sidewalk. This is the process that's going to happen. We had a few people contact us at that point, and then we send out another letter more recently, and we say, we did it, we designed it, this is what it looks like, this is what the process looks like. And so we have those two, and now if the city council decides to go forward with this, then we meet with the neighborhood and go through the particulars of the yards and how it's going to look and exactly what the design looks like.
But if I'm understanding the process correctly, at that point that you'd meet with the neighbors, there's no more discussion.
Right.
So I guess as I think you know, I want to see these investments made in the Heights. I want to see safe routes to schools advocated for. I think council's been real clear here. But I also want us to do this as neighbors and be inclusive. And so tonight we're pulling agenda item 2 because of lack of engagement. We have neighbors who are, feeling like their voices aren't being heard. What can we do? How can we engage our community better in these processes so that they're not getting neighborhood meetings when there's no point in having them anymore?
So, Councilmember Owen, as you know, you and I disagree.
I know we do.
So
and we probably will
again on this. So it's really hard for staff to go out and have these conversations in great depth if the city council isn't going to support the project going forward. So we bring it to you so that you can say, yes, this is something we want to do. SIDs, as you know, we spend a lot of times with the property owners because it's really their choice. Do you want your street paved? Do you not? On projects where we believe there's a lot of choice by the city or by the citizens, and there's an opportunity where we need to hear from the citizens to say, yes, this is what the direction needs to be for our city council. But you all have set a policy that says we want to do safe routes to school. We want to make these connections. We want to invest in this. So it's hard for us to go out, have these meetings, and have the city council not approve something like this. So we have the discussion, we come here, we make sure it's there, and then we spend the time working through the.
And I think you're absolutely right to say you and I will disagree in perpetuity on this because, and I will say it again, I am much more likely to support it when I know there's been proper process. I know that when you run program as big as the one that you run, these dollar figures seem small, but if somebody threw a $14,000 bill at me, I would pass out. And I just think that we could reconsider our citizen engagement project. We talked about it on stormwater, we've talked about it, and you and I will probably always disagree, but I just want to raise again my concerns that we don't do enough to engage the public when their engagement has an impact.
And I would say that they get the letter that says, call us if you want to meet on site, call us if you want to have these discussions. We don't get phone calls, we don't get engagement. So it's not like we're closing the door and saying we're not going to come out and meet with you, but there's not I guess we feel like having that contact and saying, call us on your individual project, your individual property. We think that's an effective way to try to have those conversations. So I hear you, and we do have a lot of public meetings on this one. We've done it this way. Certainly, we can look at something different if we want to.
Councilmember Gulak?
Yes. Debbie, is this project identified with the South Frausta School plan?
Yes.
And did that plan have public outreach or input as well?
It did. The Safe Routes to School project, as you all know, spent a lot of time with each school in each neighborhood, looking what those projects needed to be and how kids were getting to and from school. So yes, there was a public outreach to determine the locations of these projects.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Debbie?
Sorry, Mayor, I just have one more.
Sure, Councilmember Owen.
So Debbie, do you think there's a point in reconsidering the side of the street? What are the impacts of reconsidering which side of the street this goes on? I mean, I hear what you're saying about the kids not crossing the street too much, but just walk us through what would happen if Public Works were to reconsider the side of the street.
So I think I saw Kevin just took that off of there. My concern would be what we see from people is a lot of people take the closest path. So if the kids are on one side of the street and they know they have to get to the other side, I think there'd be a lot of people crossing mid-block, crossing wherever they are coming into that to get to the sidewalk, which, they should. So that entire neighborhood that you're seeing on the east side would have to cross Claim Jumper wherever they can to get to the sidewalk. And then once they get back to Babcock, they're going to cross the street again to get to where we're putting the crossing. So I just think by doing that, we put more conflict points. And of course, the way to keep the kids the safest is to cut down those conflict points. So.
Okay, so Debbie, bottom line is you do think this is the safest option. If we assume that you have to have a sidewalk on one side or the other, our current standard would have a sidewalk on both sides.
Absolutely.
This would never have been permitted to have no sidewalk or sidewalk on only one side today, but it's an older neighborhood. So no concern on your part that this is the safest of those options, east-west side?
If I have to pick a side, I believe the side we picked is the safest. Should we put them on both sides? I think every street should have sidewalk on both sides. At this point, we're making connections, and so we're trying to just get those initial connections in. At some point, we could come back and do the other side.
And on the issue of boulevards, I'll just comment that I've been on the receiving end of many phone calls right after somebody had worked hard to shovel their sidewalk, only to have the city plows come and dump all that snow, usually in ice chunks on their sidewalk because they're street curb walks instead of boulevards. So now those issues were in the old days when there was that thing called snow. Going forward, maybe it won't ever be an issue again. But in the old days, it was an issue big time, no doubt about it.
Thank you, Mayor. I forgot to point that out.
Okay, anything else for Debbie before we come back on this issue? Okay, very good. Thank you, Debbie. All right, so council, how do we proceed? Councilmember Boyette.
I'll start. I move that we approve items 1A1 and 1AI.
Very good. Second, Councilmember Rupsis. Okay, so the motion is for approval of those two items. More substance, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Councilmember Rupsis.
Just a quick note, reminder to all of council, the sidewalks along Lyman Avenue. This was where a rather tragic incident happened. It could have been much more tragic, but a young child was hit on his bike as he went to school. So I think it really kind of stresses the importance of these safe routes to schools. And as much as it is a personal cost to the people that are along these routes, I think the safety factors are there, and we should all support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Before we proceed to a vote, Okay, motion is for approval of those two items, 1A1 and 1I, if collectively as a group. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Councilmember Kennedy voting in opposition, and all other council members voting in favor, I believe. Yes. Okay, then next separate item was item 1H, preliminary minor plat for Zimmerman Home Place subdivision. Councilmember Aspenlighter separated only for recusal purposes. So is there a motion or other questions? Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move we approve preliminary minor plat of Zimmerman Home Place subdivision, fourth filing.
Very good. Is there a second? Second, Councilmember Boyette. Any discussion? Okay, we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion for approval of item 1H, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Aspenlighter not voting. Similarly, item 1J, zone change 1042. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve second filing reading ordinance for zone change 1042 located at 655 West Wicks Lane.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Joy. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion for approval, item 1J, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Last item is item 1K2. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I move we approve bills of the week, February 13th, 2024.
Thank you. Second, Councilmember Boyette. Any discussion? Seeing none. If in favor of item approval, item 1K2, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes then item 1, the consent agenda, bring us to our regular agenda. Tony, would you read item number 2?
Item number 2. Public hearing and resolution rescinding and repealing Resolution 90-16317, exempting property located within Hogan Homestead subdivision. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you very much. Jennifer is going to be making a brief presentation here. Councilmember, members, I'll just remind you, this is the one where we have a request that we open the public hearing in case there's somebody who came tonight to be heard, but that we not close it so that it could be rescheduled for a later date when the homeowner association would like to come back and have their further opportunity to comment. Jennifer.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we were going to ask you to approve a resolution to rescind a 1990 resolution that exempted property within Hogan Homestead subdivision from storm sewer assessments. But instead, we're just going to give a brief background of what is going on in the subdivision and ask you to then delay this and continue it to a future meeting. So this is Hogan's Homestead subdivision right there in the pink. So you'll recognize it includes the old Costco area, and then goes down. It was developed as a business park type area, a lot of professional type businesses in that area. And it does discharge from their subdivision to Hogan Slough. So in the 1990 resolution, it was a very simple, short resolution, which basically talked about three things that was the premise for passing the resolution at that time. The first was that the subdivision did not discharge storm into the city's stormwater system. The second item was that the subdivision has an internal storm drainage system, and that system is solely operated and maintained by an HOA at the expense of the property owners in that subdivision. And the third then was that the city then has no cost in this because it doesn't discharge to our system. So the middle item still remains today. The first item, so we did not maintain Hogan Slough at the time of this resolution in 1990. We do have maintenance responsibilities for Hogan Slough today, so it is discharging into our stormwater system, which also means we do have costs incurred for that stormwater system. So we decided we should not rely on homeowners reading the public hearing in Yellowstone County News to know that they would have something regarding their subdivision. So we sent out letters to everyone in that subdivision, letting them know that the property was subject to losing that exemption if City Council passed this rescinding of the resolution. The problem is that many of the property owners in that subdivision live out of state. And so they asked for extra time to be able to meet with the city and express their concerns. So in order to let them feel heard, there was no pressing matter to pass this tonight. We just decided to couple it with our other storm item. And in order to get everyone together from their side, we are asking that you open the public hearing tonight and then continue it to the April 22nd council meeting. I will say they are not stating that they're not discharging into Hogan Slough. What they're stating is that had they known that we maintained it, they would have maybe done things differently within their system. Even if they do things differently, I don't know that that means that we wouldn't still ask you to rescind that, because just a reminder, we do state that storm is really a function of your road. So it's even those that do not have storm on their street pay for the storm system because you're benefiting from the system as a whole. But we do want to hear what they have to say and ask that you delay this. And I'm here for questions.
Very good, thank you. Questions for Jennifer? Jennifer, and this might be a question for our city attorney on a bit of a, she's busy. I'll put it just to you. If we just delay this, I don't think we need a vote, right? I have the power to open our public hearing, and I just won't close it. And we're not changing our agenda, we're just not dealing with it, and we'll bring it back on the 22nd. I don't know, or should the council approve that, or do you have any thoughts about procedurally how we move on this? So, Gina, I don't know if you heard the question. This doesn't deal with the merits of the issue at all, but if we open the public hearing for anybody who does want to comment on this, and I just don't close it, and Chris puts it on a future agenda, is there anything for the body collectively to do at all tonight? Obviously, we want to hear from council what they think about the merits and putting it on a future date, but procedurally.
I think, Mayor, yes, thank you for the question. I think that it would be more appropriate to at least, even if there's not a motion to continue it, if you open it, take some public comment, and then simply indicate on the record that the hearing is not closed, it will be continued until the next regular meeting date, which I think was
Actually, it's
April
22.
April 22. I think as long as you make that clear on the record, then that should be sufficient.
Okay, so council, that's, I guess, the direction we'll head in, unless council wants to make a motion in a different direction. But before we open that hearing, are there questions for Jennifer on the details here? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Jennifer. So this was in 1990. When did the city take over possession of Hogan Slough and start maintaining it? And if so, did we let anybody else know, the subdivision know at that time that we were taking it over?
Councilmember Boyette, no, I don't believe we let anybody know. And I think it was clear back in the mid-1990s when we took over some of the maintenance responsibility.
Jennifer, if I remember right, it was about $60,000 potential assessments here. We haven't been doing that for over 30 years. What's 30 times 60,000? $1.8 million, something like that. So that's a lot of money. is it possible this situation exists elsewhere in the city, or is this a one-off? And if it might exist elsewhere, do we have a process to look at other situations?
Mayor and council, we have pulled a list from our property tax system that shows any property that was exempted and gone through all those. This is the only one that we can find like this.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Other questions for Jennifer? Councilmember Owen?
Jennifer, do I understand correctly that this area, or at least some portion of this area, has either some type of property owners association or homeowners association? There's some sort of organization in this area, right?
It is an HOA. In fact, it was the HOA president that called me and asked to delay this.
The whole area that you're proposing to repeal, it has one HOA.
It does.
So is Public Works willing to go meet with that board, do a presentation, help walk them through this?
Yes, we're in the process of scheduling a meeting with that board and as many property owners as well that want to come.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wyatt?
Just one last question. If they don't drain into Hogan Slough, is there an option for them to do Plan B without Hogan Slough? Question?
We will have to discuss that, and that will give us more time to really look at options. So there is Canyon Creek there also. But we've done some maintenance on Canyon Creek as well when we haven't been able to get a hold of anybody. So we don't know if they'll be able to solely contain their storm system, or if it matters in the way we do things now in the city, and that we consider storm part of the street. So everybody in the city, except for Hogan Homestead, pays for storm right now.
Okay, very good. Anything else for Jennifer before I open up for public hearing? Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So this is at least the beginning of a public hearing on item number 2. Did anybody come this evening who would like to be heard on item 2? If so, please come forward. Anybody to be heard on item number 2? Seeing no one, we will not close the hearing. I almost have it. So, council, I guess I'd propose we just let Chris schedule this for April 22. We'll leave the public hearing open. Is there anybody who would like to object to that or suggest a different procedure or have any concern about doing that? Okay. So I see nodding heads, and that's where we'll leave item number 2 and move on then to item number 3. Tony, if you would read item number 3, please.
Item number 3, public hearing and first reading ordinance amending BMCC Article 22-800, storm sewers. Staff recommends approval.
Right, we're going to continue on the storm theme tonight. This one we talked to council about in the beginning of January at a work session, so a lot of this tonight is really just review. Does it show? So we'll go through the pros and cons of why we're doing this really quick. We've gone through that before, and then the FAQs again, and then discuss the property out or the public outreach that we've done since the last meeting. So one of the reasons that we are recommending this change to move the storm assessment from the annual property tax statement to the monthly utility bill is to increase transparency. So people see that fee 12 times a year instead of the one time a year that they see it on the property tax statement. It will also, as a secondary reason, increase our billing efficiency, which will therefore decrease our administrative overhead for billing the fee. But the primary reason that we have brought it forward to council for consideration is to decrease the reserve that we need to keep in our storm fund. So by collecting our revenues monthly rather than twice a year, we can lower our reserve right now with our current fees by $1 million, which would go back into either the storm system for projects or to offset future rate increases. Now, the cons of it are, first, it's just a change, and Billings doesn't always like change, so they would see that on the utility bill instead of their property tax statement. We did this with the solid waste fee back in 2012. There were some concerns at first, but people quickly got used to it then, and we never even hear about it anymore. And then the second one is it could have some effect on the elderly homeowner and renter credit for Montana income taxes, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So the first FAQ that we've received was, how will this change affect renters? And theoretically, it should not. It's the same fee either going to the property tax statement or to the utility bill, so it should have no effect on renters. The second one is, how will it affect disabled veterans and low-income homeowners who qualify for the property tax assistance program? And it has no effect on these folks. The storm fee is an assessment, not a tax, and the storm fee is set by zoning and square footage, whereas the property tax assistance program reduces the taxable value of a home. So it does not benefit, or people do not benefit from the program now for their storm fees, so there is no change going forward. And then how will the change impact deductions on income taxes? Again, no impact here. If a property owner believes that they can deduct the storm fee as a property tax, they can do it no matter which piece of paper it is billed on. And then how will the change affect not-for-profit entities? It does not affect them. Not-for-profits have to pay the storm assessments now, as they do all assessments. They are only exempt from property taxes. And then let's get back to the Montana Elderly Homeowner or Renter Credit. So this one could have some effect. So special assessments included on the property tax statement are included in the calculation of this credit. So it's a variable amount, though. It's really dependent on household income, rent, and property tax. We believe it will affect few homeowners, but it could affect some. And those that qualify from this for their rent rather than their property taxes would have no effect. And then how will this change affect the rates? And I think this got a little bit confused when we had rates out there at the same time as we were trying to propose this. And this is completely independent from the programmatic changes that we're trying to make and any rate increase that the council may make later. And then the next one is a conspiracy theory question that I kept getting is a lot of people thought that this would allow the city to tax more by moving it off the property tax statement. So the answer, of course, is no, it does not have any effect on how much the city can levy. And then the last one is, why are we proposing this now? And it's basically just a matter of timing with two conversions that we're working on. One is the utility billing conversion, software conversion. The second one is a property tax and assessment software conversion. So either way, we have to do a conversion, and we're just asking to pick a path at this point as to where we would like to build this in the future. So since the last meeting, we've been at the West End Task Force, the South Side Task Force, Rimrock and Heights Task Force, as well as the Realtors Association and Landlord Association. I do have one more meeting on Wednesday at the North Park Task Force. There was supposed to be last week, but they had a conflict with the location, so it's not until Wednesday. I know it's scheduled after the first reading. I don't have too many concerns with that, just because the overwhelming majority of folks at these other meetings didn't really seem to have any concerns with what we were proposing and the moving it to the utility bill. While we were out at the task forces and talking about storm, we also talked a little bit about what they'll be seeing in the future with the deferred maintenance and everything else that we're proposing that we get fixed. That was much more of the conversation at these meetings rather than moving it to the utility bill. So we have amended or proposed amendments to Article 22-800 of City Code. And it's, we did attach a red line copy. It's very red in your packets as we started looking at it. The intent was, of course, just to change one thing, to move it from the property tax statement to the utility bill. But as we started looking at the City Code, we decided to clean it up. So we revised the title from storm sewer to storm sewer system rates and charges. Has always been just about the rates in this part of the code. We do have another chapter of city code that's more about the regulation part of storm sewer. And then we had the costs and the purposes that was kind of in the middle of the ordinance before, so we moved that up to the beginning and revised some of that verbiage. And then, of course, we changed it from the annual assessments on the property tax statement to the utility bill. The current code actually designates the rate methodology in the ordinance of zoning, of using zoning and square footage. So we're proposing taking that out and changing that to be set by council resolution. As you know, we will be proposing methodology changes going forward to change it to be assessed by impervious square footage. And then because of moving it to the utility bill, we also changed all the verbiage in there about the collection processes for delinquent bills. And what we did here was basically mirror what we have for solid waste and sewer, in that we can shut off water if the premise that is being served does have water service from the city of Billings, if they're delinquent. And if not, if they do not have water at that premise, we can use other collection measures as allowed by state law, which we did last summer when you saw a resolution for assessing delinquent sewer and garbage on the property taxes. So we can still do that for delinquent storm. And then we did set the effective date to a future date, which we don't normally do, but in this case, we want to get started on the conversions. Right now, we're working on two. We are working on both the utility bill side and the property tax side to convert it because we were running out of time. But so we do not want to actually make the change until the new fiscal year. So we set it effective July 1st, 2024. So tonight we're asking you to approve on first reading the ordinance amendments that we've proposed after holding a public hearing.
Very good. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for your work on this over the past months and your presentation of those task forces. I know I caught a couple, and I'm sure other council members did as well. This is the second or third time we've heard this, but I'm sure council may have some additional questions. Before we open up for public hearing, council, do you have questions for Jennifer? Councilmember Bowen.
Thank you. I actually am going to sort of do a proxy question here because I know you and Councilmember Neese had some conversations today about some language that was struck out of Section 22801. Do you want to share your thoughts on his concerns?
Sure, Mayor and Council, Councilmember Neese sent an email, I think it was copied to everyone, with concerns that we took language out specifying that City Council was in charge, I think, of the policies for this code. My answer back to Councilmember Neese was it still gives City Council full authority to set rates. We took it out because we thought it was redundant, but I have no issues with putting it back in. I think either way, it still gives council the same authority.
So from my perspective, Mayor, if I could, I think Councilmember Neese's reading is more accurate because I think council's authority to sort of set broad policy goes beyond just setting rates. It includes things like the CIP and capital investment. But you also struck like sort of the staff person who has the supervisory authority, and I'm curious about that.
Most of the authority well, it was really the roles that each person had, and it was in relation to what they did with getting it on the property taxes. So we struck that language, so we took that out of there, so it's not really necessary, and we mirrored this revision of city code after the other couple of entities in Montana that already have storm on their utility bill. So that's where it came from.
So you don't think it's problematic, I apologize, Mayor, that this sentence saying the city engineer shall have authority and control over the system, you all and legal agrees that doesn't create any ambiguity for operations?
So this section really is only about the rates. We do have chapter 28, which is all the regulations and who manages the storm system. So I don't see any conflict.
Okay, well, from my perspective, Mayor, if it's not concerning to staff, then I would suggest that the first sentence of section 22802 actually replicate the language that Councilmember Neese was concerned about, so that that sentence would end where it now ends in system. I think it could just end in system, comma, pursuant to policies adopted by City Council.
Okay, and is it in the form of a motion or just for discussion?
Just for discussion at this point, Mayor.
Potentially adding pursuant to policies adopted by the City Council?
That is the language that is currently in the ordinance, and then in section 801, and I think, given the way that section 802 has been restructured, it seems to make more sense there, unless you have a different opinion.
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, well, we should discuss that. And Jennifer, while we've got you, by changing the language that now establishes the rate structure to be based upon square footage and zoning, in the future, we're anticipating a change to something based more on the amount of impervious surface, which makes total sense. But if we were to adopt this, well, I guess it doesn't become effective until July. Okay. What I just want to make sure is that we had something in place in this interim period that we didn't get rid of, but we'll still have square footage and zoning at least until July. So that gives us until July to make a change.
Correct. And if council decides to stick with, square footage and zoning, then we could do that by resolution in the future too.
Okay. Okay, very good. Any other anything else for Jennifer? Okay, we'll open it up for a public hearing on item number 3. These changes to our storm sewer ordinances. If anybody'd like to be heard on item number 3, please come to the podium. Just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address. Any public comment on item number 3? This is a public hearing. This is a public hearing. Anybody coming forward? No one's online. No one is coming forward. We'll close public hearing on item number 3. Council, how do you like to proceed? Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the first reading ordinance amending BMCC Article 22-800 storm sewers as recommended by staff, including the clause suggested by Councilmember Owen that staff agreed was no problem.
Okay, second by Councilmember Owen. Any discussion? Before we proceed to vote, Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I brought my tax statement just for everyone to understand what this really is. My tax statement for last year, I paid $62.42 for stormwater for the year. Divide that by 12, I'll pay $5.10 a month. So to me, that's not even lunch every day. So I just want to show the public that it doesn't really affect probably the majority of the folks here, that if yours is close to that, you divide your storm sewer by 12, and that's what you would be paying.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyette. I'll just point out to you, you can still get a Happy Meal at McDonald's for $4.79. So it is more than lunch, barely, at least if you're not very hungry. Councilmember Aspenleiter? Okay, anybody else before we proceed to a vote? Councilmember Shaw.
I just want to quickly say a thank you to Jennifer Duray. She came to the Southside Task Force that when I was at. I didn't hear any objections really to this. People were just trying to understand how it worked. But I just appreciate staff going to all these task forces. I know it's time consuming, but it is very appreciated. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Council, we'll move to a vote. The motion is for approval. Using the language recommended in our agenda, with the exception of adding Councilmember Neese's proposed phrasing at the end of the first sentence in section 802, something to the fact that it would say pursuant to policies adopted by City Council. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That concludes item number 3 and brings us to item number 4. Tony, would you please read item number 4?
Item number 4, public hearing for purchase, sale, and development agreement of City Hall, South Parking Lot, and North Parking Lot with Honecker Realty LLC. Staff recommends approval.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, I want to kind of explain the process that we're going to go through tonight on items number 4 and 5, and hopefully it's not too confusing. So at first, I'm going to go through item number 4, which is the actual purchase and sale agreement for City Hall and the 2 lots adjacent to the Burger Dive. We'll go through that. I'll answer any questions or anything you've got. And then we plan on giving you a presentation right after that on the TIF application for the Rockman, because these two are intricately tied together in the PSA and the TIF application. So we want you to have all that information. The one thing that the PSA does require is a public hearing, so at some time the mayor is going to have to then break from that, go back to item number 4 and have a public hearing on item number 4, and then conclude that, and then we can move forward however council chooses to at that point. So just kind of setting the stage of where we're going in the next, I'd say 5 minutes, I can get it done, so we'll see how this goes. So as you can see up there, this is the City Hall and parking lot purchase and sale agreement that I'm going to bring to you. And what I want to kind of go through is some of the timeline. So almost a year and a half ago, we started on this and brought to you authorization, and you approved a resolution to go ahead and put these properties up for sale and see what we could do with those. So we did go out and we contracted with NAI through a process. And from November to June of 2023, the properties were marketed out there. You know, NAI has a lot of time involvement in, I can't remember what the process is called, but they 3D modeled the entire City Hall building here. So people from outside of town didn't even have to come here to look at the building. They could see it in a 3D format. So that process was open for a significant period of time. The RFP process closed on June 16th of 2023. And what I'd like to say is we only received one proposal for City Hall, but during that marketing time, I fielded numerous calls, and I fielded numerous calls. I gave several tours of developers or potential developers for this building that we're sitting in here today. And again, when it was all said and done on June 16th, we received one proposal for this building here. We did receive 5 proposals for the south parking lot and 4 proposals for the north parking lot. On June 28th of 2023, we took the results of this to the Operations Committee, the Council Operations Committee, and we looked at the following factors up there, as you can see. We really reviewed what the quality of the proposals were on all those, and obviously with only one proposal for this City Hall building, that we gauged it on this criteria. Are we still hitting these criteria, even though we only got one proposal for that? But again, with the other 2 proposals on the north and south parking lots, these are kind of some of the things that we kind of qualified against that. And then in June of 2023, after that Council Operations Committee decided to basically move forward with negotiations with Bill Honecker and his partner Don Cape for the sale of this building and the 2 parking lots, all in conjunction, because they did one proposal, one response to the RFP process for all 3 of these properties. So we started negotiations in June of 2023, kind of culminating today here at this time with a purchase and sale agreement. So the negotiation team for the city, it was Doug James and Bryce Burke with Moulton Bellingham. So we did have outside counsel that was assisting on this because it was a fairly standard purchase and sale agreement, but a lot of intricacies, as you'll hear a little bit later. Matt Robertson with NAI was also involved in that. John Caterino and Todd Korn with the city's attorney office, Jessica Foost and myself, and I think all of us are here this evening. So if we do have certain questions, we all kind of took certain areas of this. And if there are certain questions, I can lean on them for some help and support. And on the other side, the buyer, Malcolm Goodrich, Bill Honecker, and Don Cape. What I'd like to say is these negotiations were very, very friendly. You know, there's a lot of discussion on a lot of different points, a lot of disagreement on some points. But in the end, what I'm bringing to you is an agreement that I think that is a good agreement for the city to get involved in here, along with the buyer feels the same way at this point too, with this purchase and sale agreement in front of you. The one thing our ever vigilant city attorney, Gina Dahl, as we're sitting here tonight, caught what I would call just a very minor reference change in the PSA, and it was in section number 11. And if you kind of look down here at this part here, we reference 11G in your PSA that you've got, it should reference 11F as in Frank. Very minor error. There is no G on section 11, so it should reference section F. So if you decide to move forward and make an amendment, I would ask that that would just be a friendly motion to add that in there. All right, some of the highlights of the PSA. I think all of council has had this agreement for at least 5 weeks. In this form, we did make some minor clarification changes and stuff from when I first sent it out to most of council about 5 weeks ago. It didn't materially change the agreement. So with that being said, I just want to touch on some of the highlights. The reference in the PSA, it references parcel A, which is the parking lots, even though they're 3 separate legal or properties or parcels according to the tax code. And parcel B is referring to old part of City Hall and the garage building. So with that, old part of City Hall is where the police department currently resides. That's what we're kind of defining as the old part of City Hall. The garage building is the new part of City Hall, which was in the 90s, so not real new, but the new part of City Hall, and the parking structure itself. So those are the 2 references there. The sale price for parcel A and parcel B is $2.8 million. And the contingency period in this agreement is about 180 days. So if this purchase and sale agreement is ratified tonight by council, then that starts that clock ticking on 180 days for a lot of the contingencies that are in this agreement to start moving forward. The buyer's got some due diligence that he needs to get done and things of that nature. Some of those things that I just want to make you aware of is there is a contingency in there about working with the DBN moving the portaloo. So that was just set up, I think, about a year ago, or if it's even been in place for about a year. So keep that in mind. The encroachment of the Grand Building to the south, we've been working with surveyors. We had I think it was a 0.6 foot discrepancy on the encroachment, so we've been working on that. We don't think that that's going to be a problem, but that's something that the city's got to clear up. There's some ownership of the sky bridges and encroachment agreements. There was never any in place for either the sky bridge going to the Valley Building or the sky bridge going to the county courthouse. So we're working with MDT and that to basically provide ownership of the sky bridges and then get some encroachment agreements in place for this purchase and sale agreement. And then there's some things, and these are just 3 of them in the buyer's inspection and diligence. There's a clause in there that we need to come to an agreement on managing this parking garage currently up until a certain point where then the buyer would take over, or maybe we continue that agreement. So that is one of the points in there. And then I'm going to just hit on these just very briefly because you're going to get a full presentation on them. But part of the contingencies is an acceptable development agreement and approval for TIF for reimbursement up to $5 million that you'll be hearing about in the next presentation. So with that, that kind of concludes my presentation on the purchase and sale agreement, and certainly happy to answer any questions or lean on all of my partners back here to help me with those.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. Council, I would encourage us to, if you've got questions, especially focused on the purchase and sale agreement, because again, we will come back to the TIF agreement later. But if you've got those for Kevin, let's pose them. And then we'll hear on the TIF agreement, the presentations, and we'll come back for a public hearing on both the agreement and the purchase sale agreement and the TIF agreement. So questions for Kevin. Kevin, I'll just point out on the issue of the 5 in section 11A, the reference to 11G, that wasn't an earlier version, but my version has been corrected. So mine says 11F. Now that's a hard copy. Sometimes council sees the digital version, and the older one was 11. So the electronic version is still incorrect. Okay, so just to alert you, there was a hard copy that I got, and it is correct. So just that'll have to get checked at some point.
Thank you.
Questions for Kevin? Councilmember Owen.
Kevin, I wasn't clear from reading the agreement. At whose expense is the portaloo moved?
So what the agreement basically says is that the buyer and the DBA will come to some sort of agreement on relocation of that. So the expense isn't really covered on whose expense that would be.
Has that been discussed at all? Like, has there been any, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if they're going to come back with a TIF application to move a Portaloo or ask for tax dollars to move it.
I don't have an answer to that on what that would entail.
Thank you. Other questions for Kevin? This is way too cooperative of a group. Councilmember Boyette, thank you.
I just want to say that Kevin's been working on this for a long, long time, and I want to thank him. Not only does he have other duties, but this was a big one on his plate, and he's always been a good sport about this, and I want to applaud him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Anything else for Kevin? On that, how do you follow up with that? Councilmember Shaw.
I have a quick question for Matt Robertson, if you'd come up here for a second, because I know you've worked on this for a while, like Kevin, and we're on the team. I know we've had this in our packet. We've all looked over this. Would you just explain very quickly to the public why, in your opinion, you think this is a good investment, or I'm sorry, a good decision for, because we're making this on behalf of all of the citizens of Billings, that you think this is a fair deal? I just want to get that out there because I know we've had conversations, but I want to put it on the record.
Sure. At the onset of this, we did a lot of valuation work just to get a baseline of where we thought the property was valued. We didn't advertise any price. We opened it to an RFP process, allowing for anybody to bring in a bid as to what they thought it was. So we weren't leaving any money on the table, if you will. We had the opportunity to counter back the developers, so they came in with a lower number. We countered back to the 2.8, they accepted, and then we did additional math. We looked at it on an income approach. If a developer outside of the current developers would take this property and redevelop the old city hall into multifamily or something like that, or keep it as office. We looked at all of these different venues, and every time we came back at least at or below the assessed value that we countered and accepted at. So we feel really confident. I can talk through all of the valuation metrics that we looked at. We looked at it on the income approach, on the sales approach. We looked at comparables downtown, all fall within the range that we've accepted within.
That's perfect. Thank you. I don't need you to get deep into the weeds of it. I just wanted the high level explanation for people who haven't been aware this is happening. Yep. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, I've got a question for you, and if Matt wants to comment, he's welcome to, but can you just remind anybody who might not be aware how the agreement deals with the building that we are in here today? Specifically, the developer has the ability to walk away from the whole contract for lots of reasons if they want to, but they specifically have the ability to proceed with the rest of the sale with the exception of this older city hall because of question marks about the condition of the building. Can you just walk us through how that process might play out?
Yes, thanks, Mayor, for the question. So we've spent probably several meetings and several back and forths over a period of a month or two on this portion. So that's why the agreement breaks down the old City Hall building, which is where the police are housed right now, versus the garage building, which is the newer part of City Hall. With that being said, there's potentially significant unknowns in the old part of City Hall. We know there's asbestos in the building. We know that there was some leakage of some fluids down in the boiler room. But we don't know to what extent. And so with that, obviously, it makes the buyer trying to calculate, is this developable property, and at what level, can they come in here, develop this property based on some of those things. So then what we ended up doing is putting a whole section, and if you looked at section number 14, it was just in that dealing with the old City Hall building. And then we put in there some exclusions of significant environmental, structural, or material economic concerns, and spoke about those that, yes, if some of those come up, then what what the intent of this is we want to come back and sit and talk about those. What are those things? Can we come to an agreement? If not, that old part of City Hall can be severed then from this buy-sell agreement. And then we got to look at either condoing or common wall, or some sort of, that where maybe the city would retain the old part of City Hall based on those three type of conditions. But certainly both parties want to come back and talk about that if things like that come up. So that's a kind of a high level, probably multiple hours worth of discussion that we had to get to that section 14.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else for Kevin? Councilor Rowan?
This conversation has just raised a little bit in my mind, so I apologize for jumping in again. But I know we're going to deal with TIF applications separately, but we have to talk just a little bit about optics. And so if I were to look at this in the most negative light possible, I might say something like, gosh, these guys got a pretty good price on a pretty big building. We're going to give them $5 million in taxpayer dollars, and then they get to lop off the pieces of the property they don't like. And the taxpayers get left with the pieces of property that some of the best developers in the community have said, there's nothing you can do with that. How would you respond to that kind of comment?
So part of that agreement that we were talking about, the old part of City Hall, was, should it be discounted? If the old part of City Hall gets lopped off, should the purchase price of $2.8 million be discounted? And that's one line that we took pretty firmly in saying no. There's not going to be a discount off that $2.8 million if the old part of City Hall, one of those conditions is met and we can't come to an agreement to deal with it. So that's my biggest piece is, and yes, the city may continue ownership of that old part of City Hall, and then we'll have to look at those significant environmental, economic, conditions, and then decide, what's the greatest and best use for the public with that? Would it be demolition, creating green space? I mean, that's what we're going to have to deal with later on down the road. But we were very firm on wanting to not discount it if that became an issue.
So they just essentially walk away?
Correct, from the old part of City Hall.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Anything else for Kevin? Councilor Kennedy.
Kevin, one of the pieces on this, and people are talking about the $5 million in tax increment financing. The tax increment financing district is to get new growth in the city of Billings, and it was set aside to help with infrastructure needs. So in their plan, it's not to offset this building, it's to help them build the hotel that's going forward. So part of their whole project is that they would get tax increment financing dollars to help with the infrastructure needs. And then this building they would pay for, and then they would knock over the other buildings and start their building process. And I think the total is, if I remember, $41 million for the total project. So I just want to be clear and have everybody clear. The tax increment financing dollars are dollars because of growth in the downtown area that go to projects to keep building in the downtown area. So I think we came together on both of these, but really it's the sale of the building, and then we can talk about infrastructure needs and helping them with the tax increment financing. If I'm wrong, let me know, but I just wanted that clear.
So, Mr. Kennedy, I think you're right, and I just didn't want to steal the thunder of the next presentation coming up. But yes, and the only reason that we're combining these together and doing that is because there is that contingency that that TIF part has to be is a contingency, and then the buyer, if you guys approve, then it meets that contingency. If the buyer, or if you don't approve of the TIF, then that's a contingency out for the buyer for the purchase and sale agreement.
So that probably is a very good segue to our next presenter.
Exactly, Mayor and Council.
Chris.
So the Downtown DBA, Mamet, is going to be our next presenter, followed by our Finance Director, Andy Zeller, and then Andy will be followed by the Development Group. So this it transitioned over to the Tax Increment Finance Grant request and recommendation from the Downtown DBA. And then, as I said, the idea would be then to do some Q&A, just like we just did on the PSA. Then once those questions are answered, Mayor, a reminder, we will need to have the public hearing for the first action item on the sale, and then move into, if it is your inclination, a motion and discussion about the grant application. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mehmet.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mehmet Casey on behalf of the Downtown Billings Partnership tonight. The picture in front of you, I thought it was a cool snapshot of the history of it. On the left side is the Rockman building that is privately owned. On the right side is what it used to look like before Park 3, the current parking garage where it's located. And so this is 2nd Avenue looking from 27th, looking westward. So the project, the Rockman site, built in the 1915 era or in the early 1900s, mostly as a series of small retailers. Since then, it has housed several independent businesses. This list is just to name a few of some of the establishments that you might be familiar with, namely the Gene Rockman Interiors business that was, the building was named after. And then the Honaker Realty, or under the name Rockman Family Trust, purchased the building in 2015 to bring a hospitality project, but in the meantime, continue to lease it out to various businesses that you see also today. So jumping to the project by the numbers, this is a list of the eligible expenses and categories that the Downtown Billings Partnership looked at and prioritized in terms of the focus of the reimbursement. And then the column to the right of the items shows the MCA and under which these typically fall, which also is consistent with the city's TIF policy. And then the recommendation is stating not to exceed the 5 million number, which is roughly about 12% of the total project. Keeping in mind that they do have a larger amount, up to 9 million in eligible expenses. But again, the prioritization fell on these items in consistency with the MCA and the city's TIF policy. And then continuing this slide, project by the numbers, but also looking at that formula that we are used to looking at, the return on investment. The current assessed value, despite the fact that it says 2 properties, and these are the Rockman site and the north parking lot adjacent to it, what is available to me is the Rockman site, which is the number that you see in front of you. When I look up the parking lot, it just shows 0 at the moment. But as both of them get redeveloped into the hospitality project, that's the estimation that we're looking at. The other difference you'll notice is typically in the past, you've seen that number of the percentage of the project cost to be in the 80 percentile. That's based on what the real estate industry has told us in the past. But after several conversations with real estate, the Department of Revenue, appraisers, the developer, the consulting some of the existing buildings of similar sizes, we felt more comfortable in taking a more conservative approach because we simply don't have a project of that size as a new construction in the central business district. The closest that got to it was the Home 2 Suites, but it's just outside the central business district. And then the other projects that are of this size have been a rehabilitation of an existing building. So the first project really that will become clear to us as to how it performs on the tax rolls will be when the Old Town Flats get completed by the Griffin Development Project on First, because that's another brand new construction in the central business district. So this is the approach we took it down to 50% with the commercial rate and the annual tax increment, and then the return on investment by years. Now, keeping in mind if that estimation goes any higher than 50%, then the return on investment number of years will shrink. And then a few pictures of the site. So top left corner picture is just highlighting again the 2 portions of the parcels that will house the hospitality project. And then the top bottom right side of the slide is a rendering of the hospitality project, but it's also just for scale purposes, keeping in mind that this is subject to change, and it's simply a draft at the moment. But this is the kind of style and scale that we're looking at. Couple other pictures too. One looking from the south side of North 27th Street, one looking almost from an aerial view showing showcasing the rooftop patio concept that is also part of that establishment. And then, oops, there we go. And then this is a picture for a later time when the current City Hall building that we sit in would be redeveloped as well. So that this is kind of looking at it from the courthouse lawn semi-aerial view. Okay, so project merits. Number one is this is a business development and growth opportunity for the downtown area that we haven't seen in decades, and that's something that our board has been on the hunt for several years, and it matches some of the asks that we have in the urban renewal plan and the downtown Billings strategic plan. It meets the city's infill development policy, complies with the MCA and the city's TIF policy. First new hotel construction in 45 years since the DoubleTree, which was under 2 other names prior to the DoubleTree brand. And then it also supports the public safety efforts and initiatives by activating that building with many bodies of both the employees and the visitors and the guests, and having that robust movement in and out of the building and eyes on the street, which will keep the area active and deter undesired activities. And I think I only have one more slide. There we go. So the Downtown Billings Partnership Board recommendation is pretty much consistent with what you've seen on the staff memo. So recommending up to $5 million supporting the identified eligible expenses, and then talking about how the disbursements are allocated or released after the project with a tentative starting fiscal year, of course, assuming the completion of the project at the prior year. And then there is that additional clause that if the city accelerates the TIF reimbursement in a shorter period of time, like 4 years or fewer, then the final TIF payment shall be discounted by $400,000. And then the applicant will sign a development agreement within 180 business days after today's decision. And then if the funds are not available, reimbursement will be carried over to future fiscal years. And with that, I'll pause. I believe we'll return back to questions because Andy has a piece on the TIF forecast and the cash flow.
Council, let's hear from Andy, and then may answer some questions, and then we'll have questions for Mehmet or Andy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think I've really outdone myself for presentations. This is just an Excel sheet, so it's this is well, hopefully it'll load on the right screen. I bet it's over here. Oh, it's just really small. Who in the world? How would anybody work like this?
Next level.
Yeah.
Just trying to save money and didn't renew his Microsoft.
As you can see, everything is just fine. Are you moving the mouse? Are you bummed? It's just super small. There we go. All right. Thank you, Kevin. I don't know how this program works. So, all right, leave the mouse alone. Thanks. All right. So with every TIF project, our staff maintains kind of a forecast look on cash flow for all 3 districts. And this one just being so large, we felt like, hey, we should probably share this with council so they have an idea of what we're looking at. Generally, our purpose here is making sure, we're awarding projects that we think we can pay out. They time well with all the other projects that have been awarded. So that's the purpose on maintaining this list. What you see here, the column on the left, estimated beginning cash balance, estimated revenues. Then we drop down into our annual operating expenditures. And then beneath that, we have, all of the awards that have been approved. There's nothing on here that's speculative at this point. And then that beginning cash balance flows through the next year, and just making projections going forward. What do we think we can do? So as you see here, tax revenue, I'm showing as not changing at all for the next, I don't know how many years that is, 10 years up there. And with the exception of 2 new construction projects being added on here, the Rockman project and Old Town Flats. Now, the reason that I'm projecting 0 tax growth beyond that is because I am incredibly nervous and conservative about that. When you look historically, you don't see much. There we go. We look historically within the district, actual tax revenue and entitlement, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down every other year nearly. Largely that's driven by the centrally assessed properties in the district. It's not necessarily a function of all the other properties in the district, the redevelopment. AT&T, I believe that, or CenturyLink owns the reddish brown brick building downtown. That is a large individual property tax parcel in the district that when that one sees large fluctuations, it heavily impacts the district. So because of that, I just generally say, all right, looking over time, yeah, the district trends up slowly, but not year over year. I would point out here, starting in probably 2015 is where I'd look, and then think about going forward. In 2015 was the last time the legislature made significant property tax adjustments. That was going from a 2-year or a 6-year reappraisal cycle to a 2-year reappraisal cycle. And you see we are collecting more today than we were in 2015. But there have been years where we were higher, and there have been years where we were lower. So assuming that we maintain that flat property tax plus those 2 new parcels, this is looking at a tax revenue of around $3.3 million annually. With that in mind, we have in here the Rockman payout as envisioned in the development agreement. You see we do get down to an ending cash balance in FY31 of $3,000. I will highlight this is a very conservative approach. Even with some small changes here, you could see something quite a bit different. Citywide, our tax base tends to grow at about 2% a year on average. So, that if you put that in here, it would be telling a different story. And then obviously we're making assumptions about future costs as well that we just don't know necessarily what to expect other than just some annual escalators in these areas. I think with that, unless there's any questions specific to this.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open up for questions, either for Andy or Mehmet. Councilmember Gulick?
Okay, I think the developers also were going to speak as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, I just.
Well, I already said it. So Councilmember Boyette.
Can't take it back.
One of the questions I've heard many, many times is if we approve this, is there any money left in the kitty for somebody that comes in tomorrow and says, well, hey, I want to build something. Is there any TIF money going forward that'll be left over?
So, Councilmember Boyette, the way I would approach it is the same way I did with this one. We would look at it and say, okay, what's your project? What's the timeline look like? And what are those payments going to look like? If someone came in today and said, hey, I'm going to be done next week and we want to do this major project, we can put them in here, but if it's more than $3,000, it's going to make mine go zero, but that's not what's actually going to happen. We know it's not going to stay flat. We just don't know what it's going to do, this district. This development agreement, and I think subsequent development agreements as a result of this one, will put in have a clause of priority of payment. So those agreements that you've already approved, that have already been signed, take priority over those future development agreements, including this one. So if we find ourselves in 2029 in a position where, hey, we don't have the financial capacity to pay out all these agreements, they will be paid in order of approval, or I'm sorry, in order of the chronological approval of the development agreement. With the exception of our bonds, those take priority over any development agreement as well. So that's generally what I would say at this point.
Okay, Chris, you want to comment on that?
Mayor and council, the piece I would add is you see in section 4.3 that covers specifically the grant, we show 1 million a year over 5 years. There is, if the cash exists, 100% to the determination of the city. If it is able and chooses to pay this grant over 4 years instead of 5 years, we shave $400,000 from the grant, so it ends up being 4.6 million. Similarly, if we do not have the revenue because these estimates turn out to be higher than what it is, like the prior agreements, it clearly states we can't pay what we don't have, and that the grant award extends out to a longer period of time. So just wanted to point those two components out as they affect maybe as much as saving $400,000 or paying out that not to exceed of $5 million over 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. And we have had to do that one other time over the past 5 years due to changes beyond our control with value changes. So just wanted to highlight that while the spreadsheet was up, before we turn it over to the development team to present the project.
Some straightforward questions before we hear from the development committee or team. Councilmember Rapsalatter.
Almost got it, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And this may be a question for Chris, but it may fall back to Andy. I know we've been talking about our ownership of the Babcock, and there's some things that need to be done to the Babcock building. Presumably, those are going to be things that would come back as TIF-funded projects. Do we have any idea what those are? And I'll stop that by saying, I hate PowerPoints, but I get all ginned up about a spreadsheet, so.
My man.
Yeah, Andy's, as a nerd, I'm all in on the spreadsheet business. Can you speak to that, Chris?
Yeah, please.
Unfortunately, I get to oversee the Babcock Theater also, so you will be getting a presentation, I believe it's on the 18th, so next Monday night, just kind of where those costs lie. And the ask is going to be somewhere in the $200,000 range. That we've got $200,000 in repairs that are almost half to have done, so.
Go ahead.
So a follow-up, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Kevin or Andy, how do those that $200,000, presumably those can be done before 2027 and fit in a window in which it would not impact when these draws would come? Is that how you see that happening? And is that why we're looking at that next week to talk about that project?
Well, the next meeting, I mean, it's just falling in line with what we're doing, and then I'll defer to Andy what, $200,000 in there would do to his spreadsheet, because I don't have that spreadsheet of what that would look like, but, and do we need to look at different types of funding sources for that?
So with respect to the timing, I guess the development agreement for the Rockman project says, we take priority over any future signed development agreements. So it wouldn't, it's not an attempt to, rush that one forward so we, beat this out. That's not going to happen. With any additional expenses here, we would really just look to say, okay, what's the appetite for risk? At least that's the way I would approach it. As I've said here many times, right, it's 0%. I don't think I know that's not what's going to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen here, and so this is the approach I've kind of resolved to take. If you plug in just even trending 1% growth here, you see quite a bit different story. By the time we're at the end of this, you're in hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what's represented there right now. So I don't know how to answer it beyond that unless. Chris wants
Chris,
to
you want to?
Andy, please correct me if I'm wrong, just very directly. I mean, any dollar that's added to this cost with these assumptions means each cash carryover is lowered by that dollar. So if nothing changed, right, but an additional $200,000 were spent and that month, nothing else was changed or on this, we'd get what, out to year FY31 and FY32, and we would be negative. Am I stating that?
That's correct. Yep.
So just want to be crystal clear that that's, and the direct answer to your question relative to if. Now, as Kevin can attest, and as he's been, answered your question, this issue of the Babcock, though it may have been brewing out there for a while, just in the recent weeks, if we said, okay, if we've got to deal with this, we're going to have to bring it to council. So don't want anybody to think there's anything going on, behind the scenes. I think in good faith, whatever decisions we make, though it's a public expense, we need to be sensitive to that as well relative to our good faith dealing with this project and the Old Town Flats project before it.
Councilor Esplanato again?
One last follow-up, and this is more like very directly to my point. I understand the agreements are paid out in the order in which they come. But in my scenario, if the Babcock needs improvements, the Babcock's not going to wait for improvements, I would imagine, until not until 2032. Those Babcock improvements are going to be able to be done within the span of 12 to 18 months. So theoretically, we would make that expenditure before we even have a financial obligation to this group, which then has a cascading impact on our ability to pay this group. So this timestamp in which we agree to those, are we going to then force the Babcock agreement to be paid out all the way at the end of this agreement? Because if we don't, we're going to screw this. I mean, we're going to impact our ability to fund this one. Again, assuming flat growth. That's my very specific question.
So Councilmember Asplanato, Mayor and Council, I think the first thing that we would need to do if a decision were those improvements have to be made is we're going to have to look at the things of which are within our control, our budget, our other components of the district, and see, are there other cuts or changes that can be made to make up that difference, especially until we get to the point in, let's just call it September 1st or late August, when Department of Revenue gives us, the estimate, and we know, okay, where did we land in this first year of adjustment?
And I guess that kind of answers my question, and I'll leave it at that. To be clear, I want both of these projects to go forward. I think that they're incredibly important, but I just want us to be mindful as we're having this conversation based on whatever we do tonight, that we're going to have another conversation that's going to directly impact this, and that whole paid in the time in which we make these agreements, it could cause some issues. And I guess I just want us to be aware of that, and then staff to please, as we're talking about the Babcock, based on this, action we take tonight, I guess please have an approach as to how we're going to deal with that and what legal, door we leave open to ourselves or exposure we leave to ourselves by doing that. I'd want some clarification on that project as it comes forward.
And that's a topic I'm sure we'll come back to during the discussion tonight because it's very important. Councilmember Boyette?
Scott was asking my same question.
Okay, very good. We do want to hear from our developers. They're kind of, Councilmember Owen.
Andy, when you talk about these projections of revenue, so you project this Rockland project brings in $285,000 a year in revenue. Am I correct in understanding that at no point in this 10-year window are you projecting the potential impact of the redevelopment of this building?
That is correct.
And is that because we don't anticipate them redeveloping it in that time frame, or?
No, that's just purely my.
Okay.
Maybe.
And then this is going to be. It's going to become immediate that I don't understand property tax real well when I ask you this question.
Okay.
But Is there something about a hotel inherently that lends itself to this kind of projection of revenue? That if this building were developed as something other, office space, for example, is it likely to have much less financial revenue? Is it going to generate less revenue, or does the type of development in this building matter?
Yeah, so it does matter, but to what extent, I probably give a very poor answer. They do an income-based approach to value commercial property. So commercial office space would be valued at a different rate per square foot, or generally than a hotel would be, because the intended use is, I think, quite different. But beyond that, I probably couldn't give you any more detail.
So we don't have any way to say as a thumbnail, the redevelopment of this is going to be another 100,000 or 200,000, regardless of what it is. We really have nothing. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Mayor, thank you.
No, fine. Chris?
Mayor, could I just add to the answer to, also in answering Councilmember Owen's question, in part, that's why we only show Old Town Flats and the Rockman projects and not other redevelopment projects, and deliberately, this is speculation on my part, over the past 20 years in Montana, those are new construction projects. And so we treated them, we call them out, whereas what I have seen over the last few decades is redevelopment projects aren't nearly as impactful. Not to say they're not impactful in a very positive way, but from a tax side of it, you don't see all the projects and an estimated jump from them all. You deliberately see these two projects that are new construction on sites downtown of sizable nature, right? Both of them are multi-story new construction projects. So does that mean there won't be a bump from a redevelopment of this, which is not on the tax roll? No, it doesn't mean that, but we're not as comfortable, either one of us, saying, oh, here's going to be the number.
Okay, very good. Councilor Ripsis?
Chris, on that, but from day one, there will be a property tax impact from both this side of the building and the parking garage and other, office space down on the first floor, that, from day one, those will go into private hands, and we'll have additional revenues beyond that 285 as well, right? That 285 is only for the hotel property, doesn't include anything here.
That is correct, yes.
That's what happens when it goes from government to private ownership. Okay, we do want to hear from our developers. Gentlemen, just to let you know, we usually take a break around 7:30. That's what it is now. We're a bit flexible about that. I'm going to give you the option, depending on how long you think you would like to go. If you think it'd be 5 or 10 minutes and you want to go now, we would then probably take a break after your presentation, come back, and then ask questions. I have no way to tell how long that'll go. If you would prefer that we take our break now, then we'll just come back, you can have your presentation, we'll move immediately into questions. So if you want to go now, chat amongst yourselves, give me the finger up. If you want to wait until after our break, go finger down. Finger down. Okay, that means we're going to take our break, and we'll come back, we'll hear you in about, we'll aim to come back at no later than 7:40. So no more than 8 minutes, please. Nobody listens to me until I have a gavel in my gavel. All right. Okay, we left off at presentation by our developers. We'll also have an opportunity for some questions at the conclusion of that for staff and our developers. So I don't know if it's Bill, Don, some combination of all the above. Please come forward. I'd say welcome to Billings, but it's not exactly appropriate in the case of Mr. Honecker. So this is exciting, and tell us about it.
It is exciting. Thanks, Mayor and council members, thank you for having me, first of all, and being able to say something, which I always have a lot to say. So I'll try to keep this short, but for those who don't know, me, I'm part of a fifth-generation Billings family and have developed in downtown for 30 years, starting with Walker's Grill and then moving to a number of different projects. I have a long relationship with the city and with the Downtown Partnership in terms of TIF, and I've been on the board. I've served as president and as chairman. My partner is with me, Don Cape, as a fourth generation legacy real estate family out of Bozeman. And between his family and a couple others, they were pretty much responsible for the 19th Street retail corridor, which included big box store development. He's involved in medical buildings, office buildings, mixed use, and obviously hospitality. He and I have developed several projects together, which is can be dangerous putting two developers in one room, but we've mitigated that risk a little bit by kind of specializing in our own specialties. So I deal with the site acquisition, the analysis, initial funding, and then Don, his expertise in construction design and management of the hotels comes in. And we have done Hilton Gardens in Billings, Hilton Garden Inn in Bozeman, Comfort Inn and Suites in Bozeman, the Home 2 up the street across from the hospital, and we're finishing Home 2 in Bozeman that's due to be completed, we hope, by July, and it looks like we'll make it. So this would be our sixth hotel project. And the reason I tell you this is I don't want to make this a pitch necessarily. It's not that we took a dart and threw it at a map and then tried to find a project for it. We've spent literally months and months of due diligence using our own experience in hospitality and in the real estate sectors, but also our management company, PEG. They have developed and or manage a huge portfolio of projects. So, and of course, we have consulted the main brand, the national brand, who have pretty much signed off on the site and are excited to move forward. So, and we do all of this extensive due diligence mainly, and Dawn and I have talked about it a lot, but mainly to make sure we're not drinking our own Kool-Aid, because developers can do that a lot of times and they make mistakes by not looking at everything that's important and just raising the rents and then somehow trying to make it. And after all of that, everybody involved has concluded that this is a great opportunity for downtown Billings, and we obviously agree. In terms of the site, I think you're aware of it now, the Rockman building I've had for a little over 8 years. And by the way, just for the record, we have kept the tenants there apprised of the progress and the whole thing, even at times where I wasn't really sure where we were on the deal. But as a site by itself, and if I could talk you out of your 3 lots, it was a good site and a developable site to put something on. When you decided, either knowingly or unknowingly, to sell your excess assets, which included the parking structure, all of a sudden it became, we could develop a substantially larger project, and it became a hotel site. And to that end, along with that comes substantial TIF and increment that, and obviously taking most of the property from public to private creates a considerable amount of TIF. And we're estimating between $260,000 and $300,000 of increment of TIF, most of which is increment. And to answer, I think it was your question, some of those estimates have come from actual comparables because we have the home too, and it was a ground up project, we've used that as a comparable for the rates that we used. But to also answer your question, generally hotels are a little bit more, especially than office, because office is a little depressed right now. And keep in mind, and I think someone addressed this, but that doesn't include any improvements we do to the subsequent assets, the other assets that are not a part of this, which obviously will add additional increment and make it even better. And we feel that that's important because we're not taking, a $5 million ask is a big ask. But it's critically important to level the playing field, because in Bozeman and Missoula, we don't have those rents, we don't have those room rates. But generally the vertical costs are the same. So we need the help in getting a level playing field. Bozeman, it works without much TIF assistance because of those rates. We're not at that critical mass yet in Billings, but we're getting closer. TIFs provide, the bottom line is they provide the incentive to take the risk, and to try to create more and more critical mass so that you can start to get to a point where lo and behold, maybe you're not using TIF to having to keep building projects. And we will catch up. I mean, that's just a fact. And the fact that that we have these kinds of balances in the TIF district is in and of itself means it's successful, because we've added more and more projects and it's gotten a bigger pot. So, in our case, we qualify in theory for, $9 million of expenditures, but we feel like we're only asking for 5 because we feel like we can do it with that. And we also, being, me in particular, I'm a downtown Billings supporter, always will be. And if we can provide access for other projects to the TIF monies, I think that's crucially important for everybody, including our project. And if we can't provide that now because we're being conservative with the estimate, then we will shortly, we will soon, because as soon as the increment we are creating becomes unencumbered, then now it's provided to everybody else down the road. So TIF is a long game for sure, but it's an important one. And Andy and I kind of, I can't say disagreed. I'm a developer. He's an accountant, financial expert. So, but even if we were to add that 1%, there's significant, 1% growth factor. There's a significant amount of balance that occur over the years, because it's that powerful of a financing tool. By, I hate to say partnering with us, because you might catch grief with that, but you're basically partnering with us so that we can invest this huge amount of money which really represents one of the largest private ground up projects maybe ever. And it's the first project, as they mentioned, in 45 years in terms of a new hotel downtown. It's going to create a showcase, modern, highly visible project that targets the next generation of professionals downtown. And at the same time, it complements the existing hotel inventory, because we're swimming in a different lane than they are. And we've tried to be certain to do that. So for example, the DoubleTree and the Northern have considerable conference areas. We're not a conference hotel. The Clock Tower has a pool and attracts kids and events to the Metro. We're not a family hotel. So I think not only is it going to complement, but I think that everybody's going to rise with, the tide. And I think that's an important detail. We've done 2 loft projects downtown, I have. And, Mehmet was talking about how the safety, just activating the street, makes safety appear better. And I think it makes it better, but that's an important, critical impression we have to change for downtown of Billings, and specifically downtown being unsafe. And this project will add 200, quote unquote residents that are there 24/7, eyes on the street.
you know, we do fulfill, you know, the land goals of infilling urban, you know, vacant urban pockets. But why that's important is because we don't have to build any infrastructure to accommodate that. We're just tying into existing infrastructure. So it's a much more efficient use of monies. We're creating 80 to 100 jobs and probably more. I probably underestimated, but they, for the most part, will be lower and middle income jobs, which are still very important to the market. And we intend to and are committed to prioritizing Billings construction companies, and if not, that Montana, for obvious reasons. We're both generational families. So I think this checks all the boxes for the city. It provides, you know, provides capital resources to finish your own project. It fills, you know, the space with a quality development rather than letting it go dormant or vacant, God forbid. Probably the most important element in my eyes, though, is that we're the developer and we're the end user. So we're not waiting for tenants, and we're not waiting for funding, and we're not waiting for the funding to wait for the tenants. We can start literally tomorrow, although there's a ton of work to do. You know, being from generational families, there's a lot of pressure every holiday season to make sure that what we do, there's just more pressure on us not to fail at this. It's important because all the families that I've grown up with, you know, we just have that pressure to make sure we're not going to do the wrong thing. And it's not that we can't make mistakes, but we try not to. Dawn and I are both very sensitive to being on that long list of projects that never happen. So, you know, we're local developers. You can literally walk through our projects. And I think that's important. You know, we have an intimate knowledge of downtown in the market. We have quite a bit of experience in construction and development and management of hotels in particular. And we have a successful history with the city and the downtown group for starting what we finished. So, you know, for me, even though this is going to sound super prefaced, it seems like that's exactly what you had hoped for. So in the meantime, I just appreciate you letting us talk and discuss that. And obviously, we're available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Bill, and I'm sure there will be some. And if you don't mind, I'll start us off with one. And I just want to preface it with my observation that I agree. This checks all those boxes. It's a very promising project. It brings people downtown, mixed use, residential and commercial, all the things we've been talking about for so many years. We're also very fortunate to have a development group with such deep ties to Billings and to Montana. So thank you, and thank you for taking interest in our community. Question. You heard some discussion earlier about some needs that the city has for investment in government projects that we've been eyeing TIF money for some time. For example, improvements to the Babcock. Briefly, we had a conversation during the break. What's your understanding about that? I'm going to put some words in your mouth. You tell me if you agree. It's your understanding that although prior private contracts take priority in are having to fund those, and you'll take priority over future private contracts in the future that come after this one. We're not prohibited from using TIF dollars for future government projects. Is that your understanding of our agreement? Potential agreement?
And actually that was a suggestion from the city administrator. That was his language that he and I had talked about. And I think, I'm not sure the Babcock came up, but that there are those projects that need to get done. And, you know, technically, if it was just chronologically, then we would come before that because we were approved first. But so that's why we added it has to be a private, in other words, the government projects come first with the understanding and I guess trust that it doesn't get like, all of a sudden there's not money available because of that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Other questions for Bill? And then we'll also for Mamet or Andy, but first for Bill. Any questions for Bill? Councilmember Rowan.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
You made an interesting statement that I think really kind of resonated with me, that you feel a lot of pressure to make sure this doesn't fail. And I like that. I like that hustle. But you also are carving out a pretty unique niche for your desired market. What makes you bullish on that particular niche, that sort of young professional, non-convention related, non-family? What are you seeing that drives you that way?
Well, again, there's a lot of people's opinion that drive us that way, and you know, PEG Development that does our management of our own other hotels, they're very analytical in how they look at the things, and you know, I'm with, I think as you, I love spreadsheets too, so we look at it from the aspect of you know, what you have to look at every time you start a business. You have to look at what isn't in the market, what are you going to fulfill, and we don't see really any of the existing hotels necessarily filling the next generation. And so for us, that's, you know, I'm probably out of our targeted market, to be honest with you. But I think that's an important, we have to take that next generation and give them something to be proud of. And I think that's really part of what, and you don't know me very well because I'm pretty bullish about everything. So.
And then, Mayor, if I could ask one more question.
Go ahead.
So on that same vein, are you able to share any timelines, assuming everything goes through and that your hotel construction goes fine, of what your timeline might be for this facility?
Yeah, and it's kind of changed because the negotiations took a little bit longer than I had hoped, or that we both probably hoped. Right now, we're probably looking at a completion of end of the year 26.
For the hotel?
For the hotel, yeah. We're you know, we have about a year of design, which we're hoping to get done in 25 and then start in in 24 and then start in 25. It'll take about 16 to 18 months to build. So we have to kind of hump it at this point. But we really, you know, there's no reason not to. I mean, we don't really have any impediments. Other than, obviously, it's hard to make deals when you don't actually own the real estate, you know, and we have to finish some agreements with the franchise, some of those things. But that's all, you know, that's all part of the due diligence period anyway. So once, I know Dawn is exactly like me, and once we get the okay, we really lower our heads and go.
So when would that result in you redeveloping the City Hall side?
So yeah, that is, I got asked that question at the break, but it's not that we don't have any interest in the other assets. It's just that the focus is going to be on the hotel, and so we have to do that. We have been having conversations with all of the other real estate, and you know, to that, I'm not sure who brought it up. Maybe it was you, but you know, you were talking about the City Hall that we can just walk away, and I would, the language is such that it has to be a pretty significant reason to walk away, and that's not our intent. But we also can't, you know, make promises we can't keep either. So.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for Bill or Andy or Mehmet? Or any other staff member? Before we open it up for a public hearing, we do need to have a public hearing on item number 4, the purchase and sale agreement. I don't see anything. So, Bill, thank you. Oh, Don, what? Can you come and introduce yourself? Because in case you didn't know, you got half. This is half yours, so at least.
Don Cape from Bozeman, and I just wanted to speak to a couple of points. When I was building I had built the Garden Inn in Bozeman, and it was at the time the nicest hotel. And someone from out of town showed up and said, "We're going to build the Armory," and I'm like, "That's crazy. That's the big 9-story hotel downtown." And what it dawned on me was sometimes to see the forest from the trees, you need somebody to say, this is an opportunity that's not being realized. And so when I think of this particular brand in downtown Billings, it's not because of what's here, it's what could be here. And so neither one of our hotels serve that market, that specific demographic. If you were to look at this particular brand and compare it to the Garden Inn, the host brands, Hilton and Marriott, would say they are both focused service, but they go after very different demographics. One's a little bit more progressive, a little more edgy, might be the right word, forward leaning, and the Garden Inn's very traditional. And I think that's a slice of Billings that isn't being served. I don't want to say it's build it and they will come, but sometimes it's you got to step back and go, what doesn't exist and why doesn't it exist? And oftentimes it's because no one stepped forward and said, I'm willing to do it. And honestly, our management company, which is out of Salt Lake, when we called them and said, we're working on this site, we've got great ideas, we threw some brands at them, and they said, no, this is the brand you need to do. And it was for that reason. They looked at downtown Billings and saw what could be, not serving what is. The other thing I did want to mention, because I do come from Bozeman, and Bozeman's evolution has a lot of pros and just as many cons, and you can all read about those cons. The one thing that does not exist in Bozeman that exists here in spades, and I've said it every time I've been in front of this chamber, is the spirit of cooperation you get from staff. I've never in my 30-some years of developing in Bozeman have had a solution-minded staff like you've always had in Billings. And there was arm wrestling on some of these deal points that weren't insignificant. But the spirit was, let's get to a resolution, not we won't do it, so go do something else. And then the last thing I'll add, that's just a really sincere compliment to the Billings staff. It's been there, like I said, since I started doing business over here. The city hall and the city admin parking garage, those weren't on our radar when we started this project, as Bill had said. But when I think about what can be there, we want to buy all of it and not find a way out on City Hall. I know that's a concern because that's the white elephant that's got the contingency attached to it. That contingency is, when we do a project, we're betting, my wife and I, Bill and Marcia, are betting everything we have on the project. And there's certain risks that'll take us down. And if the environmental risk is too great, we have to be able to say, we can't assume that risk. But if it's not gonna be, gee, we can't come up with a good enough idea, or we don't feel like it anymore. That's not the intent. It's really to allow us to keep going forward on everything else. And we do want to buy City Hall. We do want to close on it, and we do want to redevelop it. Bill and I have our differences on, I look at that building and I'm thinking this is really cool redevelopment. Bill's like, are you sure? That's the banter that two developers go through, and that's when we don't drink each other's Kool-Aid. We just drink our own. But the intent is to buy City Hall and do something really, really cool with it. But that contingency is just to protect us from getting cratered by some known reality. So, but I know that's been kind of a white elephant as we've gone through these discussions. So I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for your nice comments about city staff. We agree and appreciate that. The design of the proposed hotel looks a lot like the one immediately on the east side of 5 West, on the north side of Revelry. You don't have anything to do with that new hotel in Bozeman, do you?
No. So what's interesting?
Yeah, it's not the Element. It's immediately on the east side of 5 West. It's brand new, just opened up last year.
AC Hotel?
Okay, yes, yeah.
No, one of my counterparts did that.
Okay.
If you click through enough of the links on the Gazette site, you'll figure out what hotel we're building. So one of my regrets, and this is a box I get to check by working with Bill on this particular project, is when I think about what I've done and not done in Bozeman, I didn't do a downtown hotel because at the same time the Armory was, we had a horse race going on, and I thought that was a better project for Bozeman, so I bowed out of the project I was working on, but I wish to heck I'd built a hotel in downtown Bozeman. Now it's kind of saturated, but yeah, if you can't tell which hotel we're building by the renderings, spend some time on the hyperlinks on the Billings Gazette site.
Okay, very good.
We're under non-disclosure, that's.
Okay. Anything else for Don? All right, gentlemen, appreciate it. We do want to have a public hearing. That's needed specifically for item number 4. But if anybody wants to comment during this time period on specifically on the tax increment financing assistant element for item number 5, please feel free to do so. I don't know whether we ever had item number 5 officially read. Is that essential? Did we have that done?
It is not essential.
Okay, then we'll dispense with it. Everybody has it memorized probably at this point. So this is a public hearing, though, on item number 4 or item number 5. If you'd like to be heard, please come forward at this time. As you heard before, we just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and your address. Who would like to comment on either of these two items? Anybody? No one is coming forward. This is a public hearing. This is a public hearing. Going once, going twice. I'm going to close it. Nobody's online, no one's coming forward, so public hearing is opened and closed. Councilmember Boyette, I don't know if you got questions. As a certain amount of deference, if you were going to make a motion, which I much appreciated, I wonder if you would allow that to come from council members in that ward, if that was your intent.
Yes, but go ahead if they want to do that, sure.
Okay, that's okay. Can I look down here? Arm wrestling? Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion. So having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the execution of a purchase, sale, and development agreement with Honaker Realty LLC as recommended by staff with a minor corrected reference.
Do you think you can find a second? Okay. So Councilmember Shaw has the second. Would either of you like to speak to your motion or second?
I really pleased to have a project of this nature in downtown. I like the plan, the massing. It's from an urbanistic perspective really well done. It's great that this the Park 3 can be. I mean, it's a existing infrastructure that can be used so readily. So I'm really pleased with that. Let's get this thing done.
Okay.
I'll just add that I am similarly very pleased with the scope of this project. At least just speaking for myself, something of this magnitude and nature is exactly what I was hoping for when we put these properties up for sale. So I appreciate the work with city staff and all of city staff's work on it. I know it was a long haul for everybody, but I think it's going to be a really good thing for Billings, and I appreciate from both sides this being brought to us. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyette, since I stole your thunder, did you want to follow up with a third or something?
Well, no, I just, the staff spent a long time working on this. I mean, operations council, the council itself, but mainly the staff. And I was surprised. I wanted to get this over sooner, but it took some time for this to happen. And I guess that's the best way to do it, is everybody say what they wanted to say. But I think this is a win-win-win. That's where we're at right now. And I was really impressed with the gentleman here, that they're here for the long haul. They're citizens of Montana. They want to do a good job, and they want to represent Billings. So more power to them. Thank you very much.
Additional comments, Councilmember Rowan?
Mayor, I just wanted to briefly say, mostly for the public, I think that the compliments that have been shared for the staff work are really, I mean, well-deserved. I think Kevin has fielded 65 million questions from council members. But I also think the public should know that you, Councilmember Boyette and Councilmember Neese, you worked really hard on this. And so having those elected officials at the table, the public should know that you guys put a tremendous amount of work into this as council members as well. And I'm really grateful for your leadership on this project. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Additional comments, Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm very happy about this project. This is a wonderful opportunity for the city. And I think it does take project after project to build momentum. And maybe with my rose-tinted glasses, I'm seeing momentum happening downtown. I really do believe that, and I do see it happening. You know, we've talked a lot about TIFs and what happens if a TIF has the balance sheet for a TIF, but a TIF is created to accumulate money, not to keep it, but to turn it over to a private industry or a private company that wants to do something. So yeah, the TIF balance goes up and down, but it's what it's meant to do. So I wish you the best of luck.
Very good, thank you. I'm just going to make a comment about a provision in Section 11D titled Time/Failure of Contingencies. There are a number of contingencies in this contract. The developers can exit stage left for really many reasons or no reasons. We hope, of course, that does not happen. In that paragraph, there's a sentence that says that in the event of unsatisfied contingencies of the buyer, both the buyer and seller shall meet and negotiate in good faith to attempt to resolve such unsatisfied contingencies if possible. And certainly that would be the intent of the city. If we hit a snag, we will negotiate in good faith to see what we can do. The only point of these comments, though, is to make it clear on the record, my understanding, that we have no obligation to fix those contingencies. They may come up with title problems or environmental problems, whatever it might be. My understanding of this agreement is we have no affirmative obligation to go and fix those things. Their option is to walk away. We hope that will not happen. Of course, we'll negotiate in good faith to see how we can help cure any of those problems. But I just want to make that clear that my understanding is we have no affirmative obligations to clear any of those contingencies. Other comments before we proceed to a vote, Council? On only item 4, again, this does not address the TIF agreement, only the proposed purchase and sale agreement. Anything else? Okay, then the motion is for approval of the proposed agreement that we have in our packet, with the understanding that that one section 11F reference will get clarified. If we're ready to vote, everybody understands the motion. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. That then concludes item number 4 on the purchase sale agreement. Council, how do you want to proceed on item number 5? Councilmember Shaw.
I'm going to go ahead and start with a motion, since we don't need a public hearing on this one. I move to approve tax increment financing assistance from the Downtown Urban Renewal District to the Rockman project up to a maximum reimbursement of $5 million to be paid in 5 disbursements of $1 million, each within 5 continuous fiscal years as recommended by DBP Board.
Second by Councilmember Gulick. Either of you want to address your motions? No? Councilmember Gulick? No. Other council members? Any further discussion on item number 5? Then we'll proceed to a vote. Okay, motion is for approval. Item number 5. If in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. I think that concludes both items 4 and 5. Thank you, council. Thank you, developers. Thank you, staff, supporters, DBA. Everybody's worked very hard for a number of years generally, but specifically for the last year and a half. Okay, item number 6. Tony, would you read item number 6?
Item number 6, tax increment financing assistance from the East Billings Urban Renewal District to Tailwind Management LLC for remodel and redevelopment of property at 320 North 17th Street, up to a maximum reimbursement of $137.86 and $137,086.47 as recommended by the Byrd Board.
Hello, Mayor and council members. I swear they're not leaving because of me. Yes, I do have the clicker. I hope you all are doing well. I'm Michelle Harkins, and I'm here representing the Byrd, the Billings Industrial Revitalization District. I'm here on behalf of Tailwind Management Offices. All right. So I'm just here representing them for their TIF application that was approved by our TIF review committee and our board, and we're here to present it to you tonight. So project overview. The project will entail demolishing the existing interior and installations and converting the entire building into office space for Tailwind Management. The building will also receive a complete exterior facelift, adding significant architecture dimension, a proper entrance to the parking lot, and paved area for customer parking. While this is not included in the funding, It will add to the entire project cost and add to the beautification of the neighborhood in an area where we haven't seen that thus far. And we think it will be a catalyst for that on 4th Avenue and for the rest of the neighborhood. The plan will also include a new fence, proper landscaping, and other details which you see. And you can see where the property is right on the map. It's on the corner of 17th and 4th Avenue North. Some facts about the property. The current business location is at 525 St. John's Avenue in Billings, Montana. The business was established in 2002, and the fact that they're moving to the eBird is they outgrown their current location, and they were looking for a new building. The current team is 7 staff members. At this new building, they'll be increasing to 2 additional staff members. The business focus is on management and maintenance of homeowners associations and commercial associations. They're hoping to occupy fully this new location at the end of July of this year. This is the Tailwind Management Office's timeline. So for the rest of this month, they'll be doing site work, utility upgrades, framing, beginning electrical, plumbing, and HVAC rough-in. March and April, they'll be completing the rough-in, insulation, drywall, exterior sheeting, windows, and exterior doors. And just continue work by completing in late July. I won't make you guys listen to word by word of their work. The current project site, so you can see it's on 320 North 17th Street. The block and the structure was currently used by Yellowstone Ice and Water, mostly as a warehouse and file storage center. As it sits, it had 2 offices and the warehouse in the back, but it was not used for those purposes by the by Yellowstone Ice and Water. So it was pretty deteriorated on the inside and the outside, and the pipes and everything weren't used for quite some time. So you can see that's exactly how the property looked on the outside. We were having some issues with graffiti, the unhoused population, and unwanted behavior going on around this building and hiding behind the exterior of the building as well. This is one thing I really enjoy about TIF projects is someone taking a project like this and bringing back to life and not just leaving it to sit and continue to get blighted in a neighborhood. So these are some renderings of the finished project here. You can see that not only will it be getting a facelift on the outside, but there'll be other measures being done to increase the beautification of the project and also the SEPT-ED principles, with new windows being added to sides that there wasn't windows before. It will increase the eyes on the street, especially on 2 main streets that we have in the eBird. These were the project drivers from the eBird. So it's promoting economic growth in the district. And it's especially in the industrial center. It's retain, recruit, and expand existing businesses and support the Catalyst projects. This is supporting a local Billings business that wants to expand into our district. And we believe, like I said before, it's going to be one of those Catalyst projects because I think a lot of people walk through the eBird currently, and we need those few projects throughout the area to really be those Catalyst projects and bring more businesses in. It is in compliance with the SEPT-ED, crime prevention through environmental design, best practices and sustainability measures. It's elimination and prevention of blight, and the improvements will generate tax increment within our district. Here are our dates and numbers that were approved by our TIF review committee and our board. So the application was received on February 5th to the Bird office and was reviewed, and then our review committee saw it on February 13th. And they agreed unanimously to send it on to our board for $137,086.47. On that same day, our board approved it unanimously for the same dollar amount. And then today we're here before City Council with our recommendation for you guys to have the final approval over the TIF funds and what you see fit. Here's the fund breakdown for the project. So the total project investment in 320 North 17th Street, and that number includes the purchase price of the property, is roughly $950,000. The private investment on this property for the Tailwind Management offices is $813,000, and the requested TIF amount that the eBird and the Bird has approved, and hoping City Council will approve as well, is $137,000. And then here's our spreadsheet that breaks down into more detail. So the fully requested amounts and what was a fully allowable expenses from TIF is $232,761.65. Out of those, we came to our approval amount based on our primary needs in the area and what we saw fit, and basically to get it down closer to the percentage that City Council recommends. Then you can see below, we got that 517 by taking out the land value of 303 and then taking 80% of that number out of the total project costs. And we have a payback about 20 years. While this does seem like a long time, and I know it's not the ideal payback period, these are all estimates of what we're getting, kind of like what Andy said before. We don't have an exact math at this, and I talked to Jim Tevlin, who was previously with Sabura, who came up with these calculations, and he's explained that we are doing the best we can until we have a concrete numbers that we can really come back with how exactly we're following through with these. If you take out, I was talking to Council Member Neese about if we took land out of the total project cost, the recommended TIF assistance would be around $107,000. So just to give you guys some perspective on that, because I know that was something that we discussed as well. Okay, and then this is just our little phrase that we have. And then, thank you. And we do have representation here if you have any questions about the project, the site, or coming to the eBird as well. But I'm here for questions.
Very good. Thank you, Michelle. Questions for Michelle or developer of any type? There is no public hearing on this item. Any questions? I don't see any. So without a public, but don't go too far away.
I won't.
Something might come up. Council, how do you want to proceed? We don't have a public hearing. Councilmember Shaw.
I move to conditionally approve tax increment financing assistance from the eBird Tax Increment Finance District Funds to Tailwind Management LLC up to a maximum reimbursement of $137,086.47 as recommended by the Bird Board.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Gulick. Would either of you like to speak to your motion? No? Councilmember Gulick.
Just spent a little time this weekend in Toucan Gallery, which a building much like this one, it appears, and it's a fabulous little place. So we are doing some placemaking, and you know, I will say that the percentage of cost that the TIF is bearing on this project is a little higher than what, but I think it's also really important to have some good projects showing what can be done in these places. And so, yeah, I'm excited to have this little stretch, or this little patch of eBird improved.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Boyette.
We just want an invite when it's done to come see it.
I would love that. I would love that, because this is my third time before you guys with the TIF application. So it's going to be really exciting next time we have y'all to the eBird or at our annual meeting, which is on the 14th of June, which you're all getting an invite for, but to see all these projects under construction and coming to life.
Very good. Thank you. Anything else for Michelle or discussion? Council, I'll just comment that often these presentations, the critical number that I look at is that return on investment. How long is it going to take with new revenue coming in to pay back the TIF application or the TIF grant? And there's so many unknowns that go into that. Often it's just a percentage of the money that's going in. But that's not a criteria that the Department of Revenue uses in establishing valuation. The DOR might look at an income approach. What do other similar projects generate for income? They might look at a replacement cost, which would be what you actually put into it. Might be just comparables. What are other buildings of that nature, if you can find them, going for? But we put a lot of weight on this ROI number. What we don't go back and do is see how those guesses ever actually paid off, or how close we were on when we threw those darts. So what I would hope that we could get staff to do, or more likely Michelle to do, and Katie to do, and Sabura to do, is maybe go back over the last 5-10 years and see how we did, that'll be very interesting. So, and that would, I assume, inform going forward how we're going to make those judgments in the future. So that's just a comment. So, but I'm glad to hear you're looking at that. Now, Michelle, you want to comment on that comment?
Yeah, so I've started making a spreadsheet already, and I've already gotten all of the TIF projects that have come through the eBird on there, private investment, TIF investment, and I'm working on, and I have the current taxable value on there, and I have to just go back and get I'm going to do every 2 years taxable value on there and just see how they've all changed and do that. So I'm in the middle of all these TIF applications. I'm going to work on that just so we have more, because I bet it differs district by district, so we can have more of a stronger number to look at when we do these projects, and then maybe we can even group them into type and have a better idea for the eBird, especially if we're continuing to grow and have this many applications as we've seen coming.
That's great. I encourage you to do that. I'd encourage you to work with Katie Mamet and Dick Zier to see if you can develop a common methodology so there's as much agreement about that as possible.
Yeah, I love learning from them, so.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else before we proceed to a vote? Council? Don't see anything? Okay, so we'll move to the vote. You have a motion before you for approval of item 6, consistent with the staff recommendation. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members.
Thank you. Okay, next item, public comment on anything that was not on our agenda this evening. If anybody would like to comment, please come to the podium.
Catherine Card, 2815 4th Avenue South, Mayor and Council. It was really exciting information, exciting plans that you all have worked on really hard. I want to talk about something that impacts the city as well, and impacts perhaps some of the impact that these projects will have on the city. So I want to talk about the unhoused. Pity the city whose focus and priority is money and the care of and interests of the moneyed white community. Pity the city, pity the people who do not realize or believe that the well-being of their neighbors, every neighbor, including the most addicted, the most mentally ill, the most non-white, the most poor, has significant impact on our own well-being. Pity the city whose poor are judged and blamed for their conditions. Pity the city whose people with money and power who live in comfort, refuse to help those without, yet claim to be faithful servants of the God of love. Pity the city that tolerates 600 of its school children being homeless and about twice that number of adults living without reliable shelter. Pity the city that does not regard this as a community crisis. Pity the city where the public restrooms number only a few during business hours and weekdays, and number one, the Portaloo, at night or on weekends, when those who are in need of such facilities are 99.999% having to shelter elsewhere, having to get food elsewhere, and medical care, social services elsewhere, and have little, if any, transportation but their feet or their wheelchair to get to that toilet. And pity the city where the haves seem so proud of posting on their doors and in their windows, "No public restroom here." And pity the city that provides few toilets, public toilets, and then arrests its people for public urination and pooping. And pity the city whose citizens with position and money coordinate the removal and the raising of all the places where those who are poor and unhoused and unwell mentally and physically find some comfort. Mayor and council, pity this city and us, the people of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on items not on our agenda this evening? Okay, we'll close the public comment period. Any council initiatives? Seeing none, Councilmember Gulick?
Pardon me, Mayor, I guess not a council initiative, but just a little council discussion. Is that possible?
If it's short enough.
Yeah. So we did get hear from a number of constituents, including downtown property owners, that were interested in looking at a two-way a study for First Avenue North and Montana Avenue, and the council we rejected that on a 6-5 vote, that study going forward a couple weeks ago. I've had a number of conversations since then with different community stakeholders, as well as some city council members. While we may not be going forward with that particular study, I'm pleased that we're looking at potentially do another study that has maybe a more comprehensive look at our community, and also like a transportation master plan, and that's something that we discussed at our upcoming retreat on Friday. And it's important for us to be, in our transportation studies, be looking not only at the movement of vehicles or other modes, but also considering what kind of impact those have on adjacent properties. We want to have the properties in our community be productive land. We don't want to create sacrifice zones along areas of high traffic. So because we're going to be continuing looking to focus on that, I'm happy we're going to be doing that, so that I don't feel like we need to somehow try to resurrect the one-way to two-way study that was being proposed. So look forward to talking to you all on Friday more about that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw?
I got to throw it to Councilmember Roops just real quick. He got some exciting news tonight that I think council might, you got to tell him. It is exciting.
This is exciting. Councilmember Roops, you have the floor.
Well, it's certainly not city-related, so if anybody has to go, please do. My son is a sophomore down at Texas Tech University. He's studying music education. He plays the trumpet. A group of students, probably about 20 to 30 students from Texas Tech, went to the National Trumpet Competition this weekend, performed in a variety of ensembles, large ensembles, small ensemble solos. My son's large ensemble made it through the weekend to the finals this evening. That's why I stepped out a couple times, and they won. So
they did.
very happy for those kids down there and the experiences they've had, and thanks for giving me a minute to brag on my son. I'm a proud dad tonight.
Hey. Yeah. Congratulations. We know it's all in the adults. Yes. And next work session, we'll be having a concert by Councilmember Rupsis, right? Tom, what's your son's name?
Thomas.
Thomas Jr. Okay, all right. Well, congratulations to Thomas. Send him our pride and our regards. So congratulations. All right, we're adjourned.